Hi everyone, please subscribe to my channel. Blood Immortal Venerable. See playlist for other chapters and novels. I do not translate the novels. Credits goes to original translator and author of the novel. I only make it as an audiobook so it would be easier to just listen while doing other things. Credits goes to the author of the novel. I convert stories to audiobook for mental health, for multitasking purpose, for accessibility and time saving. Listening to audiobook is also beneficial for people who have disability. It improves our listening skills and improve our English comprehension, vocabulary and other things. So, thank you for listening. Thank you and thank you very much for your support. Chapter 1881, Rejection. When Zen won against Nelly, he equally won the final battle in the arena of legends. The god's killing sword array hadn't fought with its ultimate strength. In fact, although Zen had destroyed Nelly's own body after releasing all four of the swords, he could do nothing at all to her avenging body. In the end, Zen never truly defeated Nelly's avenging body, but fortunately, the arena of legends still announced him to be the winner of the battle. The next step Zen had to take care of was losing to Laquisha and giving her his points. In this way, it would be difficult for the wealthy clans on the floating islands to investigate the anonymous man's true identity. Moreover, Zen could make an attempt in becoming a true god by taking in the mysterious mud. As Zen glanced at the wall, he found that Laquisha's name was gray, which meant that she wasn't in the Hall of True Gods. Even if he challenged her, he wouldn't receive her response. Zen had no interest in continuing to challenge the other low-ranked True Gods. Without lingering much longer, he left the Hall of True Gods. Now, his room was ranked first in the Hall of True Gods. Nelly, on her behalf, had fallen down 2 places, currently positioned behind Laquisha. As for Pearl's room, it was still second. In Joy's palace, the atmosphere was sullen. Laquisha buried her head in Joy's chest, sobbing. Joy was trying to comfort her, frowning somewhat. Zen hadn't told her what had happened between him and the Dongfang clan. Thus, there was no way she could have expected him to be in such trouble. If the Dongfang clan really wanted to retrieve Zen from the Han clan, the pressure would be passed on from Samuel to Joy. Zen was now in an anonymous state. Other than himself, Joy, Laquisha, and her sister, Elena, it was possible that no one else knew who the anonymous man was. If Joy hadn't told anyone else about Zen's identity, they would never find him. The question was whether she was capable of resisting the pressure. Samuel has made a mistake, Joy said in a low voice, as she stroked Laquisha's silky hair gently with her fingers. In a state of depression, Laquisha had confessed a lot of things to Joy, such as how she had made acquaintance with Zen in the Divine Refinement Forbidden Land as well as her future plans. The little girl's courage made Joy sigh with admiration. Laquisha had regarded Zen as her soulmate. If there was any chance for him to escape from the floating island with her, she even hoped Joy could help them. Honestly speaking, had it been any other warrior aside from Zen, Joy could have given Laquisha a hand. There were many cases where the disciples from the floating islands eloped. Not all of them hoped to become stronger, with the desire to stand on the peak of the godly way. A few true gods pursued other goals, such as true love. Laquisha could elope with the man she loved, but Zen, on the other hand, couldn't. The burden Zen carried on his shoulders was much heavier than that of Laquisha. But since you know Zen's origin, are you aware of what he's ultimately facing? The road he's going to travel will be extraordinarily dangerous, and he risks being smashed to bits because of his carelessness. Joy knew very well what Zen was about to face and what a dangerous situation he was actually in. So what? I don't care. I'm not afraid of death. Laquisha shouted back firmly. Joy gave her a gentle smile and shook her head. You youngsters just don't take life and death seriously. But, you know, certain things are of greater importance than life and death themselves. Laquisha didn't understand what Joy meant. She pursed her lips and said determinedly, I can only hope that you withstand my father's pressure. You can rest assured on that note. I have made my decision, and it is therefore impossible for me to hand Zen over to anyone, she smiled. Prior to being conferred the title of demi-holy being, she had been imprisoned in the Han clan for quite some time. During that period, all she could do was helplessly watch the Luo clan's destruction. She had felt regretful for many years that followed. She knew Mike had placed all his hopes on Zen. How could she give him up to the Dongfang clan? Deep inside though, Joy knew that if the Dongfang clan really wanted Zen, she would be put under unprecedented pressure. Besides, the Dongfang clan wasn't like the Lu clan, the Xie clan or any other weaker clan. It was safe to say that the Dongfang clan was the ruler of all clans. At this moment, the light that was enveloping Zen from the Jade Wall of Legends slowly dissipated. Zen's body trembled slightly, and then he jumped up from the ground. He glanced at Joy, who was holding Laquisha in her arms. He had no idea what the two women were talking about. Immediately, his facial features contorted themselves into a strange expression. 33 wins in a row. Really? Asked Joy, smilingly. Yes. Zen only nodded. He hadn't told Laquisha his identity as the anonymous man, and thus, he had no clue what to say in the moment. Clearly, he could see that Joy had discussed something with Laquisha, but he didn't know why Laquisha was even here today. It's time you lost your points to me, Laquisha said with a smile as she managed to collect her emotions. As she spoke, she stepped toward the Jade Wall of Legends. Cooperatively, Zen activated his Jade token. As he was about to slip it into the slot of the Jade Wall of Legends, a gust of fragrance blew from one side, and Laquisha jumped into his arms, holding him tightly. Watching the scene, Joy could do nothing but shake her head and sigh helplessly. Joy was also thinking things over very carefully. Harold had provided Zen with a clear hint. Hallett and Augustus never fought in the open battles. The disciples of both holy beings had made their big moves. Now, she was thinking perhaps she should do something, too. Deep inside, she didn't give up just yet. That said though, as the Han clan's demi-holy being, Joy was involved in many things. In other words, she couldn't allow herself to act rashly, like the bold youngsters could. Laquisha was holding him tightly that Zen's body stiffened. He didn't know how to respond to her reaction. After a long while, Laquisha lessened her hold and asked, if one day you want to leave the floating island, can you take me with you? Why do you want to leave this place? Zen asked calmly. It was almost impossible for him to agree to her request without hesitating. As per what Joy had said, he clearly knew what he was facing and how difficult it was. The Dongfang clan may request to take you from our Han clan. I've asked my father and he probably wouldn't refuse, Laquisha whispered. Zen had helped the Han clan a lot in the ranking of the floating island. Despite that though, her father just couldn't wait to send Zen to the Dongfang clan. In fact, he'd do so in a hurry. His attitude disappointed her bitterly, so much so that she was even embarrassed to disclose that to Zen. I won't go to the Dongfang clan. Zen placed his hands on Laquisha's shoulders, slightly pushed her back and added with a smile, I'll leave the floating island long before they come for me. I know, Laquisha nodded. Other people had to try figuring out what Harold had meant, but there was no need for her to do so. Harold knew Zen was in the Han clan's floating island, and of course Laquisha knew what Harold had tried to tell Zen. I want to leave here with you anyway. Zen shook his head slightly. No, he said firmly and inserted the Jade token into the Jade Wall of Legends. Once again, he stepped into the Hall of True Gods. As she watched Zen react, Laquisha pursed her lips. She activated her Jade token in a fit of rage and she too, entered the Hall of True Gods. As soon as he had seen the name, Laquisha, written on the screen, Zen chose to challenge her. Before long, Zen stepped into the arena of legends. He was actually on a strange island, and surrounding him was the vast sea. This was probably the scene selected by Laquisha. The said island was barely over 100 feet wide, and as a battle ring between two true gods, this was much too small. Soon enough, it was Laquisha's turn to step into this world. She walked directly over to Zen and asked, why did you refuse me? You'll die. Zen thought for a moment and then added, or perhaps I'd say you have very high chances of dying, because it's very dangerous. And what if I told you I would definitely die if I chose to stay here? Laquisha asked in a serious tone, all while staring Zen straight in the eye. Chapter 1882, Being Defeated. Zen was stunned for a moment. After he had regained his composure, he smiled faintly and said, don't be absurd. You won't die. I am telling you the truth. Laquisha snapped angrily. She pounced on Zen and grabbed him tightly by the collar, her eyes burning with rage. An explosive power generated from her, and it hit him. Zen was taken aback by the magnitude of that explosion. He landed on the ground, on his back. Laquisha landed on top of him. They gazed into each other's eyes. Laquisha couldn't make out Zen's expression due to the mist covering his face. She heard his muffled laughter though. Don't you dare laugh at me. My strength and talent are no worse than Nellie's, she stated. Those who were able to rank among the top 10 in the arena of legends often had their own unique talents. As a matter of fact, Nellie had a dual godly tile and had the Thurgy Beyond Way which was specially designed for her by Murphy. Laquisha, on the other hand, was the possessor of a special preternatural flame. As if boasting about her strength, Laquisha jumped into air, and the air around her became dry. Streaks of bright blue flames began to dance on her left hand. Suddenly, the flames condensed into a blue spear which was directed towards Zen. "Stand up, Zen, use your strength to the fullest," LaQuisha ordered in an assertive voice. She had been defeated by Nellie in the past, as the latter possessed the avenging body. If it weren't for the avenging body, it would have been a daunting task for Nellie to fight against LaQuisha. When LaQuisha was finally able to find a way to counter Nellie's avenging body, Nellie never accepted her challenge, much to her annoyance. Had she accepted LaQuisha's challenge, she might have had to give LaQuisha the first place in the Hall of True Gods of the low-ranked True Gods. Lying on the ground, Zen looked at the spear that LaQuisha had conjured. A sharp aura emitted from the tip of the spear. It seemed as if the spear had the ability to penetrate everything. LaQuisha had indeed made great progress. She had become much stronger than Zen had expected her to be. Her being ranked among the top 3 people in the Hall of True Gods justified her strength. I don't want her to get involved. It's quite dangerous, Zen thought. He was able to see much more clearly after entering the floating island of the Han clan. He was also able to see his enemies who were able to conceive themselves from him. The wealthy clans on the floating islands were so powerful and influential that people felt intimidated by their status. If someone considered any of the clans as their opponent, they made life miserable for them. Fortunately for Zen, he knew what it was like to have them as his rivals. Therefore, he didn't want to get LaQuisha involved in all this mess. Well, it might not be a bad idea after all to tell her about the dangerous situation, he thought to himself, his eyes landing on LaQuisha's earnest face. He quickly got up on his feet with a whoosh. He rushed towards her with great speed. LaQuisha watched Zen coming as she rolled the spear in her hand. There was a piercing sound as the spear began to spin rapidly. At the same time, a beam of blue light appeared from the spear and shot towards Zen. The spear radiance is so sharp. As the spear radiance made its way towards Zen, his heart skipped a beat. The Buddha Emperor sword and the Grandson sword started to form in front of him. Then, a loud clapping sound was heard. The thin blue spear radiance collided with the Buddha Emperor sword, and the power that was stored in it instantly exploded, forming a beautiful yet desolate spear flower. Then, the Buddha Emperor sword gave way. As the spear flower bloomed, another thin blue spear radiance emerged from it and headed straight towards the Grandson sword. The clap-like sound was heard again. The Grandson sword was the thickest sword in the God's killing sword array. It was used to protect its owner. But the spear radiance which arose from the Buddha Emperor sword, exploded again on the Grandson sword. Thus, the Grandson sword was crushed. Another blue spear flower emerged from the spear radiance and shot towards Zen. The spear radiance is quite powerful, he thought. Zen was fully prepared when the spear appeared in LaQuisha's hand, although he didn't expect it to be so powerful. He knew that he had underestimated her. Realizing this, he twisted his body and tried to avoid the spear radiance, but his efforts were in vain. Zen watched in dismay. The spear radiance didn't meet any resistance. It went through Zen's head. He then felt a white light flash in his mind as he returned to his own room. He had tasted defeat for the very first time, and against the likes of LaQuisha. Zen had worked quite hard in order to accumulate a great deal of points from 33 matches, but all the hard work was nullified, and the hard-earned points were lost to LaQuisha. I can't believe that I have lost, he said smiling bitterly. He didn't expect to be defeated by LaQuisha in just a single move. He knew that she relied a lot on the eerie blue fire in order to secure third position in the Hall of True Gods. But he underestimated her. She had burnt him with that fire before, but it didn't cause him any harm. He wasn't aware until now that she could use it to such extent. The last spear attack launched by LaQuisha was indeed the strongest one that Zen had ever encountered. The spear radiance pierced through 2 of his swords easily and was still able to pierce through his head after 3 consecutive cycles of reflection. He knew that this attack of LaQuisha's was unavoidable, be it Nellie or any other low-ranked True God in the Hall of True Gods, and she secured the 3rd position in the Hall of True Gods because of her real strength, and not just because of the power of fire. LaQuisha finally returned to her room. She felt a little bit better after defeating Zen. Yet she still was visibly upset by what happened earlier between the pair. As the elder princess of the Han clan, she told Zen her intention of eloping with him, but he refused. She never forgave him for rejecting her so casually. She pushed open the door of her own room and rushed down the Hall of True Gods. After LaQuisha's triumphant victory over Zen, she was ranked 1st in the Hall of True Gods. He was 4th behind Nellie. LaQuisha quickly made her way towards Zen's room and pounded on the door, but she got no response. Giving up, she finally made her way back to her room and left the Hall of True Gods. She ignored the queer expression on many people's faces as she passed them by in the Hall of True Gods. Laquisha won the battle against the anonymous man. I've told you, the anonymous man is from the Han clan. He let Laquisha win. This way, no one would know his identity and he would never be exposed. You think so? If the Dongfang clan really makes a move, the Han clan could do nothing to protect the anonymous man. The first defeat of the anonymous man got everyone talking and speculating. People had their doubts regarding the anonymous man belonging to the Han clan. Now, it was all confirmed. Laquisha had almost acquired 2 million points by defeating Zen. Therefore, in the rankings of the floating islands, the Han clan was likely to have an advantage. In Joy's palace, she watched the jade wall of legends emit some faint light as she saw 2 figures emerging from it. Joy said to Zen, "So you have lost your points." Before she could finish her sentence, Laquisha shouted in rage, "Stop." Zen backed off a few steps. "I have already proved my strength, haven't I?" she said in a fit of rage. Zen gave a weak smile and said, "I lost to you accidentally." "Well, isn't this the worst excuse of all times? If we were not in the ring, you would have died. And you wouldn't be standing here right now," she stated angrily. Joy had no idea what on earth was going on between the two. Wasn't Zen supposed to lose to Laquisha? She thought. She knew nothing of the spat between the two in the arena of legends. Chapter 1883, A Human Figure. Joy finally put a stop to the ongoing drama between Zen and Laquisha. In the end, Zen hadn't promised Laquisha a thing. In Zen's opinion, Margaret, Rocher, Letitia and the others in the fairy palace were all creatures born in the evolutionary universe and had been closely related to the life and death of the latter. Laquisha, on the other hand, was different. Judging from the overall situation, she was just an outsider. It was unwise for her to get involved in what Zen was facing, and he simply wasn't willing to do so. Ultimately, Laquisha ended up leaving bitterly, with disappointment in her eyes. As he looked at her retreating figure, Zen couldn't help but feel at a loss. Joy didn't mention anything about the dispute between the two. She had a faint feeling that she'd be faced with a choice. The floating islands and even the entire divine land would be faced with a choice. Ever since the floating islands and the Hall of Holy Beings had been established, the divine land had lasted for countless divine eras. For ordinary mortals, this was considered an eternal existence. To the true gods who were immortal, on the other hand, they had lived longer, and thus, they could see many crises. There was a saying that the divine land was falling and was about to be destroyed, and another one that said the time sea was expanding. They were also trapped in the endless debate concerning the godly ways, and up until now, there still hadn't been a complete conclusion. In the endless time, these paradoxes were ultimately hard to prove. These caused the true gods and even the holy beings to feel even more confused. A few hours had passed. Zen was in one of the best practice rooms of the Purple Soul Hall. The warriors who were capable of using these practice rooms were mostly the top-ranked true gods in the Purple Soul Hall. Zen sat up straight and turned his hand over. In the blink of an eye, the golden beast statue appeared before him. The golden beast statue was a special kind of beast that looked neither like a lion nor a tiger. Zen didn't know what the beast was exactly. Since the Han clan was willing to pull the treasure out and treat it like a reward, it clearly had to be a valuable treasure in and of itself. Due to such, Zen made the decision to take some time to refine it. After observing the golden beast statue for a short while, he noticed a small round divine texture on its backside. Upon noticing the divine texture, Zen touched it with his finger and injected it with a hint of chaotic energy. Hiss, hiss, the chaotic energy surged down the divine texture, and the latter began to spin. Then, it slowly rose, forming a small funnel. It was an amazing sight to watch. Do I need to put a drop of my blood into it so that I'll become its master? He wondered. Zen narrowed his eyes slightly. With a flick of his fingertip, a drop of golden blood quietly flew toward the divine texture. Once the golden blood began flowing down the small funnel, he somehow felt like there was a kind of connection between him and the statue. Simultaneously, the golden beast statue seemed to come to life, and countless glimmers of golden light began to emit from its surface. Meanwhile, under Zen's control, the beast began to walk around the practice room. This golden beast statue is mighty powerful and can change its shape at will. The material seems to be. Zen thought to himself. A second later, his face changed into a strange expression. Back in the evolutionary universe, the bodies created by the celestial position race for the 9 genuine dragons were in fact heavenly bodies. A heavenly body could change its shape freely, but it wasn't really that solid. Its advantage was obvious: it could form itself a new body after being destroyed. The golden beast statue in front of him was also made from heavenly essence. This one was unique though, and several complicated materials seemed to have been added in order to make it abnormally solid. Can the statue take on a human figure? He wondered to himself once again. As this thought came to Zen, the statue slowly stood up straight like a human, and its golden fur gradually fused into its body. Its beast head also progressively transformed into a human's head. At the end of it all, the golden beast statue had transformed into a human figure that was as tall as Zen. Master Evil. Zen removed Master Evil's soul seal in his mind and called out his name. After entering the floating island, Zen had faced too many strong warriors. In order to avoid being discovered, Master Evil had sealed himself in Zen's mind. Now that Zen had freed his seal, Master Evil looked around and quickly noticed the golden figure in the practice room. "What's this?" Master Evil asked, taking an even closer look at the figure, curiosity taking over him. "This is the golden beast statue, and it can change its shape freely. For that reason, I asked it to transform into a human figure, and it can be your body, right?" Zen said with a smile. Can the golden beast statue transform into whatever you want?" Master Evil's expression began to morph, and excitement sparkled deep in his eyes. Although Zen hadn't yet replied a single word, Master Evil could easily guess his arrangement. Master Evil's physical body was completely destroyed, and he was really having difficulties finding another suitable one. After all, this golden beast statue seemed to be a supreme primordial weapon. If it could change its shape freely, then Master Evil figured he just might be capable of using the statue as his body. It was better than hiding in Zen's mind and sleeping. At that, Master Evil floated out from Zen's mind and floated into the golden beast statue. Once Zen transferred the right of controlling the statue to Master Evil, the statue morphed once more and soon changed into Master Evil's exact appearance. The only difference was that the body was still glistening. "But I'm afraid it isn't too convenient for me to walk around the Han clan's floating island with my current appearance." Just as Master Evil finished speaking, he quickly transformed into a lion. He looked like golden lightning, streaking around the large practice room. After a while, he transformed into a long snake, wriggling continuously along the floor. This appearance made him very excited. Zen no longer cared about Master Evil, and he fixed his eyes on the plate that previously held the statue. He had fought so hard in the arena of legends for such a long time, in order to obtain this plate. He strongly hoped that the mud used to build this plate would help him break through the bottleneck. Why had the golden beast statue been placed on such a plate? What a pity it was that confirming the golden beast statue's origin was so difficult. If such hadn't been the case, perhaps Zen would have been more successful in finding this kind of mud. Crack! A crack suddenly appeared on the mud plate, just as Zen gently pressed it with his hand. As he gently twisted it, a sixth of the mud broke off. His inner world was already brimming with hunger and thirst, constantly urging him to feed it with the mud. Without a moment's hesitation, he threw the mud into his inner world. Plop! Once the mud plopped down into Zen's chaotic sea, there was actually no movement to be seen at all. Zen could only observe this scene nervously. The mud couldn't have lost its effect just because it had been dug too long ago, could it? He reflected on the possibility carefully. The first mud he absorbed had been really slow to react. It had been dug out by the Tai clan for a long time, while the fresh mud he had obtained from the cave had really reacted very quickly. The mud used to make the plate to hold the golden beast statue had been dug out for a longer period of time. He estimated that the reaction time could be longer. That said though, the waiting process was a sufferance. If the mud really was useless after being dug out for so long, then Zen would have to delay the moment he'd form his godly tile. It took about an hour, but felt much, much longer. A single bubble floated out from the bottom of the chaotic sea. Soon after, more and more bubbles began to emerge. As he watched the scene play out before him, Zen sighed with relief. It seemed that there was no reason for him to worry, after all. As the bubbles constantly emerged, a small cloud formed in the sky above the chaotic sea. As the cloud spread, Zen integrated his internal momentum directly into it. Not long after, a huge sword cloud appeared. The mud that Zen had just thrown in was a lot larger than both previous times, and the sword cloud was naturally even larger. As soon as the sword cloud was condensed, it floated toward the godly plate in the center of his inner world. With his previous successful experiences, Zen didn't need to stare at the sword cloud to condense the godly tile. Instead, this time, he continued to crush the mud and throw it into his inner world, piece by piece. It didn't take long before a large number of sword clouds slowly floated in the air in Zen's inner world, and the crystal in the godly plate became bigger and bigger. Chapter 1884. A multiple godly tile. Zen quietly gazed at the crystal on the godly plate, his heart brimming with excitement. He didn't have a godly tile, so he was unable to use the power of faith energy. This also meant being unable to display the theurgy of his godly way. Fortunately, Zen was able to use chaotic energy. By relying on it, Zen had managed to make up for the difference between him and the true gods. If there are true gods that exist in my inner world, then my momentum could be considered coming from true gods. If that's the case, then what's the difference between my momentum and the momentum of ordinary true gods? Zen did not know how the two differed, but he was looking forward to finding out. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sword cloud began to shrink. From a distance, it looked as if it was being devoured by a monster. When the whole thing disappeared, Zen flashed and popped on top of the godly plate. After examining it for a while, he found a transparent crystal the size of his palm in it. It became bigger. Although the crystal had been completely integrated with the other one that was formed after absorbing the clumps of mud he previously threw in, compared to the godly plate, it was only a small part. Go on. Without hesitation, Zen reached for another clump of mud, and threw it into his inner world. Minutes later, another sword cloud rose. It left behind a transparent crystal in the godly plate which overlapped with the other crystal, and now occupied about a third of the size of the godly plate. If he continued to condense the crystal at such rate, he supposed that after he threw all the mud in his inner world, the transparent crystal he finally got would be more than enough to take up the whole the godly plate. Zen then continued to throw mud into it little by little, the transparent crystal growing larger and larger with every handful he took. The strange thing, however, was that it condensed in the middle of the godly plate instead of around it. It turned into a round and smooth crystal, quietly lying in the middle of the godly plate and emitting a faint light. This was also the first time that he condensed a godly tile, so he had no idea whether what he was doing was correct. Now, I should be able to get a perfect godly tile, Zen thought as he threw the last of the mud in his inner world. As the mud turned into a cloud and hovered above, a beautiful crystal slowly began to take shape on the godly plate. Meanwhile, the lower part of the godly plate began to spin steadily and the divine textures on the surface faintly glowed. This godly plate was meant to support the godly tile and stabilize it in one's inner world. However, as Zen's godly tile condensed, the godly plate suddenly trembled. Crack, crack, countless cracks appeared on the surface of the plate, and in the blink of an eye, it shattered into tiny pieces and fell into the chaotic sea. Zen's eyes practically bulged out of their sockets. What happened? All of a sudden, he felt a mild tremor in his head. The infinity ruler shone brightly again. The rays of light penetrated into Zen's body and straight to his inner world. The scattered rays of light gathered once again and landed on that godly tile. Rumble. Zen's inner world began to tremble. The light released by the infinity ruler reached the transparent godly tile, creating rays which bounced off in different directions. Some of them hit the chaotic sea, while some landed on the continent. This is so strange. What is happening? Somewhere in Zen's inner world, the evil god stood on the top of the snow mountain and looked up at the godly tile. Right now, he could sense an extraordinary power coming off of the godly tile. The power contained in this godly tile feels very similar to the internal momentum contained in the sword cloud that the creator had once condensed. And yet, this is even more complicated. The evil god's eyes twinkled with wonder. Everything that could possibly be explored in this world had almost been comprehended by the evil god. Except for the huge Sanskrit words on the edge of the world, there was no secret for him. He had even controlled over the ice soul flame in the ice plane. Unfortunately, the creator of this world wouldn't let him leave, keeping him confined in this world forever. Nonetheless, the complex internal momentum that emitted from the godly tile gave new hope to the evil god. He felt like he'd be able to obtain a new theurgy from it which would make himself more powerful. Zen stared at the godly tile, his face displaying utter disbelief. There were all kinds of lights that flashed around the round godly tile, and around the outer rim, densely packed hash scales had appeared. Zen squinted his eyes. Those scales were from the infinity ruler. Not only that, the godly way marks that were absorbed by the infinity ruler also appeared on the hash scales. The internal momentum of these godly ways has been engraved into my own godly tile. During his time in the Purple Soul Hall, Zen had acquired some knowledge about the divine land. Many proving godly warriors had the potential to comprehend several types of godly ways, but when they condensed their own godly tiles, they ultimately chose the godly way they mainly cultivated. Only a very small number of talents were able to condense a dual godly tile or even a triple godly tile. Back when he had just begun to learn the godly ways, Zen did not understand the benefits of comprehending multiple godly ways. Many proving godly warriors practiced more than one godly way. For example, Zen had cultivated the emotion-closing godly way and wishing spell, and comprehended the ice soul flame of the mysterious ice godly way. Before, in the Purple Soul Hall, he figured the limitations in practicing several types of godly ways at the same time. All Thurges, except for the Thurges beyond ways, were all divided into several levels by the true gods of the divine land. There were the first 3 levels and the last 3 levels, which, together with the consummate level, made 7 levels in total. For example, the first 3 levels of the 5 elements godly way were the 5 elements in 1, metal wood destruction, fire wood dynamic, while the last 3 levels were the 5 elements spirit, water wood separation, and the 5 elements circulation. The 7th level, which was also the consummate level, was the divine 5 elements body. After reaching this level of divine 5 elements body, one would become a consummate true god. As for the Thurges beyond the godly ways, they were also comprehended from different levels of the godly ways. For instance, in the heavenly Han house, the 5 elements destructing displayed by Yazid was actually the Thurge beyond way comprehended from the 5 elements spirit. The 5 elements spirit was not at high level, so the 5 elements destructing wasn't a very powerful Thurge beyond way. Not many people were willing to cultivate the 5 elements destructing that Yazid had displayed, as some Thurges beyond way were just not as good as the ones they originated from. On the other hand, the ice soul flame that Zen had cultivated in the divine refinement forbidden land was the Thurge beyond way Holy J had comprehended from the 6th level of the mysterious ice godly way, the mysterious ice sacred flame. All the Thurges beyond way that were comprehended from the high-level Thurges were quite powerful, so countless people hoped to inherit this Thurge from Holy J. However, very few warriors had gotten this inheritance from him. It wasn't too difficult to cultivate the first 3 levels of a godly way. With enough time and determination, one would be able to master them. Especially for these geniuses of the rich clans, it was a common thing for them to cultivate a few types of godly ways with their special talents. But if one wanted to cultivate the last 3 levels of a godly way, which were more advanced, they would have to condense their own godly tiles. Otherwise, it would be difficult for them to use the internal momentum of the last 3 levels of their chosen godly way. However, the Thurge beyond way was an exception. Even if a true god had never cultivated any godly way, if they could somehow grasp a powerful Thurge beyond way, they'd be able to release terrifying power. For instance, back then when Zen hadn't practiced the mysterious ice godly way, he was still able to use the ice soul flame. The Thurges at the consummate level were the most important. If one condensed the 5 elements godly tile, they could only become consummate true gods by reaching the consummate level of 5 elements godly way, divine 5 elements body. At the same time, they wouldn't be able to cultivate any consummate level Thurges of any other godly ways. However, true gods with multiple godly tile could freely choose which godly way they wanted to cultivate. There were also cases where some of them could even cultivate 2 consummate level Thurges and became dual consummate true gods, which would make them more powerful than common consummate true gods. Of course, the number of true gods that had a dual godly tile was small, and the true gods who could cultivate their dual godly tiles to consummate level were even rarer. But Zen saw 3,000 small scales appear around his godly tile, something that made him feel extremely strange. This seemed to be a multiple godly tile, and it was a godly tile containing 3,000 godly ways. Chapter 1885. The Construction of the Divine Land. Zen desired to know the reason he was unable to form a godly tile. Thus, he read quite a few books after he entered the Purple Soul Hall. The description of the godly tile lay bare in one of the classics. The godly tiles were the true God's profound comprehension of the godly ways, and they were condensed after the internal momentum clouds formed. These godly tiles had different shapes. They were square, circular, rectangle and even polygonal shaped. The dual godly tile was formed by 2 equal parts, whereas the triple godly tile consisted of 3 equal parts. The edge of Zen's godly tile was covered with dense scales. It was quite like the infinity ruler. It was as if the infinity ruler had rolled up to the edge of the godly tile. Zen could also feel the internal momentum of the godly ways from the scales. As the light emerged from the infinity ruler, it made its way towards the godly tile. About 3,000 rays of light were emitted. The majority of the light rays were light golden, but some rays were of different colors. The light that contained the snow godly way emitted a ray of white cold light. With a sudden whoosh, Zen's body was suspended in the cold light. The cold light made its way towards the chaotic sea. Faint snowflakes began to appear where the light fell. These snowflakes also contained the internal momentum of the snow godly way, and the surface of the chaotic sea began to slowly freeze. A moment later, Zen's body flashed and appeared under another ray of purple light. The purple light hit the coast of the continent. The onlookers on the coast were in awe as they noticed the light. The humans that were present in Zen's inner world were shocked as to where the light came from. Is this purple light auspicious? I think it contains something that is beyond our comprehension. Who is talented enough to cultivate this kind of light? Zen's sudden appearance shocked the onlookers. There were a few people in this world who could instantly teleport to any place. Zen was one of them. He could even teleport silently without any space fluctuation. No one was able to do so in his inner world. These people belonged to the 6th grade sacred place on the continent. Many of them had reached the Soul Sea realm, and they also had a vast experience and knowledge. Who was he? An old man at the Soul Sea realm stared at Zen. He is the Venerable Creator. Another middle-aged man at the Soul Sea realm stated. He knelt in front of Zen. Greetings, Venerable Creator. Zen had many titles in this world, and each culture had a different name for him. According to the culture followed by the people in this continent, Zen not only created this world, but also took it upon himself to carry the entire world with his shoulder. As the 2 Soul Sea realm warriors knelt, so did everyone else one by one. Behind them was a young martial artist, who looked quite unconvinced. This person was a recognized talent from a 6th grade sect, and also was the son of the sect leader. He had achieved great many feats that many people couldn't when they were his age. Thus, he was a tad bit proud and arrogant. Although he was aware of who Zen was, he still refused to kneel. Get down, Cody, the warrior at the Soul Sea realm said quite anxiously. A gust of cold wind blew which almost knocked the young warrior. Seeing this, Zen smiled. As he casually waved his hand, an invisible force spread out. Please rise, all of you. These warriors then involuntarily stood up due to Zen's invisible force. Zen's attention was caught by the purple light. As the light gathered, it turned into streaks of purple smoke which flowed and leapt cautiously. It was the internal momentum of the purple aura godly way, and it was passed down from the godly way tablet Joy had built in the heavenly Han house. As a matter of fact, the internal momentum that Zen had absorbed was not the complete internal momentum. The 5 elements godly way's internal momentum that he assimilated possessed 6 levels as well as the consummate level. It was the complete internal momentum. But other godly ways were somewhat incomplete. For example, the purple aura godly way only consisted of 4 theurgies. When Joy had set up the godly way tablet, she was a mere top-rank true god who had little to no comprehension of the purple aura godly way or cultivating the purple sky land. This made it impossible for her to obtain the 6 ordinary levels and 1 consummate level of this godly way. There are 3,000 godly way tablets in the divine land. Have all of these godly way tablets also been derived from the internal momentum? Zen's heart was pounding out of his chest as he looked at the rays of light. These rays looked like the skeleton of the world, connecting to the godly tile above. Thus, he understood his father's purpose of putting the infinity ruler into his mind. His father was aware that he had mastered the primal chaos technique. Perhaps his father and his master were not able to foresee how further Zen could go while cultivating the primal chaos technique, but they must have guessed the effects of mastering the primal chaos technique. The life vitality could also be transformed into the warrior's inner world, the secondary world. With the continuous improvement of the warrior's cultivation base, the inner world became bigger and bigger. But the world was always the secondary world, and no living creature at any secondary world could leave the warrior's cinnabar field. Otherwise, it would directly be restored to the vitality between heaven and earth. Besides, the ultimate form of the secondary world could only be considered as a universe. The universe was gigantic, and it gave a holy being the ability to become immortal. However, it was only a dependency of the divine land. The inner world made from the chaotic energy was quite different. The ultimate form of the world was the divine land, but the divine land was constructed differently from the inner world. The infinity ruler was the critical factor as well. Perhaps Zen's father foresaw what might happen in the near future. Thus he gave Zen the infinity ruler. The infinity ruler, the primal chaos technique. Zen pondered. The Luo clan might have been attacked and destroyed by the Mu clan and the Dongfang clan due to these things. The old man at the Soul Sea realm interrupted Zen's chain of thought. He slowly floated towards Zen, his face full of admiration and respect as he whispered, "Venerable Creator." Zen asked the old man, "What's up? The purple aura seems to contain something endless and profound. Can I gain some insight into it? I would really appreciate if you could give me some advice, Venerable Creator," the warrior asked quite keenly. Zen shook his head. Only a woman who possesses the purple power body can cultivate this internal momentum. If there is a woman with a purple power body here, she could give it a try. This is the internal momentum. Oh, I see. The old man at the Soul Sea realm immediately nodded, but he was a little disappointed in his heart. The internal momentum was an extremely new word for him, let alone the purple power body. It seemed that he could only let the female disciples of his sect come over to have a try. You won't be able to cultivate the purple or a godly way, but look. Zen pointed towards the sky and said, "Did you notice the rays of light?" The old man of the Soul Sea realm gave him a nod. The phenomenon was quite unusual. He brought the elites of the sect to this place along the rays of light. Except the golden light rays, the internal momentum of other light rays can be comprehended, Zen stated. The golden rays of light were from the godly ways that Zen had never absorbed. The scales of the godly ways that had been absorbed reflected all sorts of aura and colorful light rays. The old man was quite pleased when he heard what Zen said. He and his sect members wanted to rush over and comprehend immediately, but given that the Venerable Creator was present, they just stood there. There was a splash, and a huge boundary cloud was visible far away in the distant sky of the inner world. Someone had become a world lord. Zen was quite surprised by the unexpected turn of events, as the shadow of the evil god flashed right before him. Then he smiled with relief. The evil god's talent was extremely terrifying. Zen had just proven the godly way while the evil god was immediately able to become a world lord. Zen addressed the old man, "Goodbye." There was a flash, and he disappeared with a flash. His body still did not produce any space fluctuation. After seeing Zen leave, the old man of the Soul Sea realm pointed at the gray light and said, "Quick! Don't let the Dark Cloud sect get ahead of us. Send more people to guard this purple light ray, and then bring out all the female warriors of our sect." The Dark Cloud sect was also a 6th grade sacred place. The gray light ray that was visible contained the internal momentum of the tortoise godly way. Chapter 1886, Levels of Lives. In the inner world, various sacred places, large clans started to fight for these rays of light that contained the internal momentum. The light rays were in such a demand that many sects even started a war. Back then, Zen did not want Evil God to build his own divine kingdom and gather the faith energy. Hence, he had cut off Evil God's intentions. Thereafter, Evil God dismissed his divine kingdom. And that was when Zen established a new rule in the inner world. No martial artists were allowed to establish a divine kingdom. Nor were they allowed to light the incense to absorb the faith energy. Every time a powerful warrior appeared and proclaimed his intention to develop the sect into a divine kingdom, Evil God would interfere and abolish the warrior's purpose. So far, Evil God proved to be the strongest martial artist in the inner world. As a result, nobody dared to oppose him. The martial artists did not have a clue about Evil God's opposition. Hence they had no option. As the strongest martial artist in the inner world, Evil God's strength had far exceeded that of an ordinary martial artist. Although those powerful martial artists didn't know why Evil God did not allow it, they had no choice but to develop the sects into the sacred places. Therefore, there were only sacred places in this world and no divine kingdoms. Zen did not interfere when the sacred places were fighting for the light containing the internal momentum. A baby world took its own time to grow up slowly. That was the nature's rule. As long as they did not seriously affect the balance of the world, the way Evil God had done back then. If one looked closely, a lone figure could be seen atop a mountain. Evil God sat cross-legged on the top of the mountain, alone. Ever since Evil God had retired, he became a legend, his position just next to the world's creator. He was in charge of managing the inner world. Very few exceptional masters were aware about his existence. The strange phenomenon continued to develop in the sky. At the same time, Evil God felt the blockage that had been trapped inside his body was released. This barrier was not caused by his own strength, but by the world itself. Previously, no world lord was allowed to appear in this world, so he was destined to continue his existence in the same cultivation level. But when Zen's godly tile matured, he was like a wild horse, freeing himself from the limits of the world and stepping into the world lord realm. When one became a world lord, he or she would disturb the vitality between heaven and earth and transform it into a boundary cloud. This boundary cloud attracted Zen's attention because of its increasing size. 10 miles, 20 miles, 30 miles. Zen raised his head and looked at the rapidly expanding boundary cloud, with a trace of surprise in his eyes. The most exceptional world lord in the evolutionary universe could only spread out a boundary cloud of 20 miles. Hence, Zen was surprised to see that the capacity of Evil God's inner world was far beyond his expectation. Whoosh, whoosh. Finally, Evil God's boundary cloud stopped after it expanded over 60 miles. Actually, Evil God didn't even know the significance of the boundary cloud. After all, he he was the first master to become the world lord. The 60 miles boundary cloud was enough to make all the others feel inferior. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Suddenly, several figures ascended up the snow mountain. Actually, the snow mountain was the residence of the entire family of Evil God. When they saw Evil God breaking through, they quickly rushed up to witness the sight. Dad, you've made a breakthrough again. That is awesome. Congratulations, darling. Finally, Dad, you have been freed of the blockage that had been troubling you since so many years ago. Evil God had a faint smile of joy on his face, but stepping into this new realm was just a small achievement for him. When the godly tile was condensed, Evil God knew that the path of martial arts had come to an end, and it was the beginning of the godly way. Just then, he turned around and saw a figure approaching from a distance. Evil God patted his daughter's head and said to his wife, "I'll be right back." Through the space law, Evil God appeared in front of Zen. He did not show the courtesy of kneeling in front of Zen, as he knew Zen did not really bother about these formalities. Congratulations. That was a commendable feat, Zen said with a smile. Evil God nodded and said, "Thank you." He thought for a moment and then asked, "There is something different now. Creator, have you also broken through?" "Yes, I have," replied Zen. "This world has restrained my growth because of its size. Creator, is it possible for you to increase your cultivation base faster? Or could I travel to a different world?" Evil God asked cautiously, as he feverishly hoped that his creator would fulfill his request. Evil God didn't like such invisible shackles. He also thought that his cultivation base had grown faster than Zen's. If he could untie these shackles, he might even surpass his creator. Zen looked at Evil God calmly with a smile on his face. He said, "You may not know the nature of this world yet. You are very lucky to be born in this world. All of you." Evil God was slightly stunned hearing his words. "What do you mean, Creator? Didn't you try to bring the creatures from your inner world to this world?" Zen asked patiently. Evil God nodded as he looked at Zen. After reaching the Spirit Supreme realm, he did try to take out the creatures in his inner world. However, the moment he took them out, those creatures instantly dissipated, turning into a wisp of life vitality. And Evil God just could not figure out the reason behind it. The people outside of this world also have inner worlds, similarly to yours. The creatures who leave their inner worlds come to an end, just as you see it, Zen continued. In the divine land, no matter it was the low-rank true god or the consummate true god, no one could release the creatures from their inner worlds. Only the holy beings who created the universes could do that. But, even then there were rigid rules and regulations. That was, only if one stepped into the godly way and got the recognition of the godly way could he become an ordinary creature, and then be qualified to enter the divine land. In the evolutionary universe, Zen was qualified to enter the divine land after he was acknowledged by the emotion-closing godly way. Later in the heavenly Han house, he obtained the recognition of hundreds of godly ways by using the infinity ruler. If it wasn't for the special condition of the chaotic world built by Zen, Evil God wouldn't be able to go out all his life. At least, he had to wait until Zen became a holy being. Evil God's expression changed slightly. "So you mean to say that when I leave this world, even I will turn into a ball of life vitality, just like the creatures in my inner world? If you are in the inner world made by other true gods, then yes, even you will face similar situation. But my inner world is special. The creatures that leave this world won't be dissipated into life vitality. So you will have to wait, as I will let you know when it is appropriate to leave," Zen said. Hearing this, Evil God was completely perplexed. He could not comprehend what his creator had imparted. There seemed to be other gods also existing in the world where his creator was in. All the inner worlds constructed by those gods are the same as mine. Then why is Creator's inner world any different? How many gods are there in the world where Creator is? Could they cultivate the internal momentum as well? Countless questions were going through Evil God's mind. It was not that Evil God was not smart. In fact, he possessed the highest intelligence quotient. However, the level of his life was limited. As Evil God had grown up in this relatively narrow world, he couldn't understand the boundless divine land. With his current knowledge and experience, he was always under the impression that Zen's world was about the same size as this world. "I have my own godly tile now, so now there are some things that I need your help to accomplish," Zen said quietly. There was only a small segment of people who were aware of Zen's existence. After the godly tile was condensed, Zen could absorb the faith energy through the godly tile. The faith energy was the momentum of a world. After a proving godly warrior became a true god, they would usually give up their life vitality and use the faith energy to prevent the life vitality from being consumed. However, Zen was still a little confused about choosing the faith energy or continuing using the chaotic energy. For an ordinary true god, using life vitality to display a theurgy was a far too energy-consuming thing. If the life vitality was consumed too much, it could even cause the entire inner world to collapse and the inner world would have to be rebuilt. However, Zen's chaotic energy was very durable compared to the life vitality. Moreover, Zen's world tree was able to continuously absorb the chaotic energy from the outside world. Therefore, Zen didn't require the faith energy at the moment. However, Zen still needed to figure out the difference between the faith energy produced by the world that was constructed through chaos and the faith energy of the other true gods. Evil God was naturally willing to help Zen, after all he had collected the faith energy before. Chapter 1887, Fall. Not even a second later, Zen looked down and gently tapped the side of a snowy mountain peak with the tip of his finger. The snow on the peak disappeared in the blink of an eye, revealing the dark cyan rock wall hidden beneath. Zen waved his hand, and the peak, which was already well over 10,000 feet high, began to float in the air. Under Zen's control, the enormous peak crackled in movement. For a moment, dust billowed all around and stones flew into the air. As he watched this scene, the evil god also secretly felt quite shocked. With the evil god's power, destroying an entire mountain with a height of 10,000 feet was a breeze. On the other hand, grabbing a mountain of this size and remolding it at will like what the creator had done was impossible for him to achieve. It didn't take long before the huge peak turned into enormous stones, each 100 feet in size. At that very moment, Zen closed his eyes, and an invisible force spread out from his body. He was an omnipotent existence in this world, and thus, nothing could stop him. As the invisible force swept over, the surfaces of all the giant stones turned into fine powder that blew away in the wind. When all the powder was gone, the giant stones turned into giant statues of Zen's image that floated in the air. I will distribute these 100 statues to every corner of this world, and you will complete the rest. Once Zen had finished speaking, his figure once again weirdly disappeared into the air, along with the 100 statues that had covered both the sky and the sun. Moments later, Zen appeared in the Emerald Pine City, which was over 1,000 miles away from the snow mountain. As Zen floated strangely in the air, he didn't trigger any of the city's restrictions. He did, however, attract the attention of many people. Several warriors looked at him and speculated about his identity. As the onlookers watched him, Zen waved his hand. Boom! A huge statue landed in the open space of the Emerald Pine City. The entire city trembled as Zen disappeared in front of everyone, never even taking a second glance behind him. As soon as Zen's statue landed, it seemed to have connected itself to the entire city, and at the same time, it exuded an irresistible majestic aura. It was as if this statue was above all living beings. This is the statue of God. Someone shouted. It's the Creator's statue, someone else replied. This statue will be, from this moment on, the Emerald Pine City's sacred object. No one is allowed to offend it. Every warrior standing within the open space knelt down and worshipped Zen's statue. The statue itself also emitted a sacred and inviolable aura. Under the cover of this aura, no one could approach the statue. A single glance at it would make people feel irresistibly amazed, which was a creature's instinctive reaction. Skyluck City. Boom! Unexpectedly, Zen's statue fell on Skyluck City's central square. The Grace Sacred Place was next. Bang! One by one, Zen placed his statues in all the major cities and sacred places of this world. After finishing the arrangement, Zen's avatar turned into a stream of chaotic energy and quietly disappeared somewhere in the world. It was then that the evil god gathered all the powerful warriors in the world and announced the secret sex establishment. The vast majority of the leaders of various sacred places generally didn't like the secret sect. After all, the leaders were the supreme rulers of the sacred places. Accepting this secret sect was equivalent to giving up on a certain amount of their power. However, despite the fact that the evil god had gone into seclusion for countless years, he still had absolute power in this world. No one dared disobey him, not in the least. Moreover, the evil god worked for this world's creator. Who could dare neglect his order? Before long, countless branches of the secret sect were arranged across all the cities of this world. Both mortals and warriors were to worship Zen's statue and contribute their faith. Faith energy continuously merged into Zen's godly tile, as well. As soon as Laquisha had defeated the anonymous man and gained the additional points, people began spreading rumors, convinced that this anonymous man was from the Han clan. The Qin clan, which ranked below the Han clan, and the Tang clan which ranked above the Han clan, were both helpless. The result of the floating islands rankings was about to be released, and nearly all the warriors of the Han clan had participated in at least 3 matches this month. In other words, they had no chances of defeating the Han clan. As for Laquisha, after obtaining the high points from the anonymous man, she would not go back to the arena of legends again. 2 days later, the wind continued blowing. Across the time sea, the gusts of wind became stronger and stronger. The magnificent seawater began to turmoil and turned into waves that rolled out on the sea. Occasionally, a few strange fish popped out of the sea's surface. The creatures wandering in the time fragments had the magical power of protecting themselves from the time sea's tearing power. The increasingly strong wind worked like a pair of chopsticks that got into the muddy water, continuously stirring the thick clouds. The thick clouds acted like huge spirals, circling in the sky above the entire time sea. At the edge of the Purple Soul Hall stood a viewing deck where many female disciples gathered. Right now, they all looked somewhat gaunt. Over the past few months, in order to obtain points, they had tried their best to fight in the arena of legends. However, their strength was limited, and so were the points they received. Only a few days ago, the Purple Soul Hall had tallied all the points, but they failed to meet their master's requirements. Almost everyone was in despair. According to what Joy had said, most of them would be forced to leave the Han clan's floating island. Every woman in the Purple Soul Hall was considered the pride of their clan, having entered the center of the divine land and become a disciple of a powerful clan on the floating island. Once expelled from the floating island, they could only expect to face an unimaginable nightmare. What these women hadn't expected though, was that the day before yesterday, news had been received that the princess of the Han clan, Laquisha, had defeated the anonymous man. This man had taken part in many battles against opponents of a higher level and lost to Laquisha. The princess had earned nearly 2 million points. In other words, that was the equivalent to the Han clan suddenly having one more consummate true god, out of nowhere. It was this news that pulled the Purple Soul Hall disciples out from the abyss of desperation. Do you know who the anonymous man was? A proven godly warrior who could accumulate several million points. How unbelievable, it almost killed me just to accumulate 200 points, a woman sighed. Ha ha, what's important here is that the anonymous man was defeated by the princess, and he lost most of his points to her, points that he had earned through his hard work. I believe that the anonymous man must be very sad, said another woman, with a smile. Think about it, all of you. Why exactly was this anonymous man defeated by the princess? It has been said that this anonymous man is from our Han clan. He was surely defeated by the princess on purpose. Do you really think that's true? Someone questioned. I don't believe it. The princess's strength is extraordinary. She was originally ranked 3rd among the low-ranked true gods. I think it's normal for this anonymous man to be defeated by her. As they listened, many women widened their eyes in surprise. The information that the true gods and the proving godly warriors at the bottom of the clans could get was rather limited. Now, although the powerful clans were all sure that the anonymous man came from the Han clan, or more precisely, from the Purple Soul Hall, most of the women in the Purple Soul Hall still weren't aware of the latter. Zen sat on the edge of the viewing deck and stared out at the boundless time sea. As he listened to the various discussions and speculations that rose to his ears, a faint smile spread on his lips. At least, he had helped Joy in keeping the Purple Soul Hall, and he had also become a true god in a rather smooth manner. Ever since condensing his godly tile, he felt that the faith energy within his body was becoming stronger and stronger, but he never had the chance to test its strength. Furthermore, he didn't dare enter the arena of legends again, especially not at such a sensitive time. Joy had secretly told him not to act rashly during this period. After the rankings were decided, the Dongfang clan was very likely to come to the Han clan in order to take Zen away at any moment, and when that occurred, she too would be placed under a lot of pressure. I wonder how Laquisha is doing these days. Thinking about how Laquisha had looked that day, Zen felt as though a needle had pierced directly into the softest spot of his heart. Seconds later though, a cold glint flashed across his eyes. Forget it, all these distracting thoughts should go away once I enter the Everest Spirit Mountain, he told himself. Once the floating islands rankings were decided, the forbidden areas were bound to be opened. As long as he entered the Everest Spirit Mountain, everything would be over, and the pressure from the Dongfang clan would naturally disappear. Who cared if they ultimately discovered his true identity? Despite having these thoughts, Zen still felt somewhat uneasy. Hey, Thad, you've only been here for a few months and yet you've already proven the godly way. You're improving incredibly fast. I'm impressed, a pretty woman suddenly said. Zen's admission to the Purple Soul Hall as a man was quite eye-catching and attention-grabbing. More so, he broke through to become a true god not long after his admission here, which naturally drew even more interest from certain women. I have been staying at the proving godly warrior level for thousands of years now. It was only after I came to the floating island that I understood the subtleties of the Purple Soul Hall and overcame the bottleneck, which helped me in becoming a true god, Zen said with a faint, shy smile. Ah, that explains it. You're lucky. Over 30 years have passed since I came to the Purple Soul Hall, but I haven't made any progress, the woman said, shaking her head in despair. There will always be other opportunities. When it comes to cultivating a godly way, it's usually the smallest opportunities that make the biggest difference. Trust me, I'm speaking from experience, Zen said. Yeah, you're right. The woman nodded and suddenly pointed down. Look, she said, the floating islands are moving. The ranking process has begun. Bang! With a dull roar, Zen saw the two floating islands, one of the Xie clan and the other of the Lu clan, which were at the bottom, began to rise slowly. Simultaneously, the floating island of the Luo clan began to descend slowly. So much so, in fact, that it was about to fall into the time sea. What happened? Harold has defeated Rochelle in the open battle and won many points for the Luo clan, hasn't he? Why is the floating island of Luo clan falling now? How is this possible? Zen asked in disbelief. Zen's eyes were filled with anxiety and confusion. As the Luo clan's floating island continued falling, his heart couldn't help but sink along with it. Chapter 1888. The Rankings. The change in the rankings of the 36 floating islands on the time sea started from the bottom. Originally, the floating island of the Luo clan had been ranked third to last. But while the floating islands of the Xie clan and the Lu clan moved upward, the Luo clan's floating island slowly descended. According to the ranking rules, the last one on the list would be expelled from the time sea, after which it would be replaced by a new clan's floating island. Of course, the new clan would need to have at least a holy being. The strongest holy beings in the divine land were almost all gathered in the time sea, but there were a few exceptions. There were a few large clans with holy beings outside of the time sea, but they were still too weak to compete with the powerful clans on the floating islands, so they didn't have the capability to have a floating island on the time sea. Will the Luo clan be replaced this time? Of course. The Hall of Holy Beings has long been dissatisfied with the empty floating island of the Luo clan. No one is there, but it holds a seat. The Xie clan and the Lu clan that came from the east of the Divine Land have the support of the Dongfang clan. And this time, they have performed extremely well in the arena of legends. I'm afraid that the floating island of the Luo clan won't be able to maintain its rank based on the points gained by Harold alone. The women discussed the rankings of the floating islands among themselves, pointing at the falling floating island of the Luo clan. Most people thought that the floating island of the Luo clan was a miracle. It had stood in the time sea without falling for so many years depending on a single person's points alone. Zen's frown deepened when he heard the women's discussion. While his clothes flapped around in the strong wind, he stood rooted to the spot like a statue, staring closely at the floating island of the Luo clan. For some reason, he felt that this island was immensely important to him. He felt like if it fell into the time sea, he would forever lose something dear to him. However, something unexpected happened then. While the floating island of the Luo clan descended to the second to the bottom, the floating island of the Zhou clan rocked about and started to move down rapidly as well. Look, the floating island of the Zhou clan is also moving. This time, the Zhou clan didn't perform well. It is said that several powerful clans worked together to oppress them. I wonder which clan will be ranked the last, the Zhou clan or the Luo clan. As Zen stared at the rapid descent of the Zhou clan's floating island, his eyes lit up and a glimmer of hope rose in his heart. Each island was a city-sized monster and thus moved at a painfully slow pace. Waiting for the end result felt like torture to Zen. Finally, the floating island of the Luo clan trembled and stopped at the second floor from the bottom. The floating island of the Zhou clan, on the other hand, continued descending before stopping at the 36th place. The Zhou clan is eliminated by the Hall of Holy Beings. It seems that the Luo clan's floating island has escaped yet another time. Well, I'm afraid that this time will be their last. This time, Zen didn't care about the women's words and heaved a deep sigh of relief. Actually, the Luo clan's floating island had been destroyed, and it was meaningless for a single bare island to stay on the time sea. However, there had to be a reason why Harold kept trying so hard to keep the island on the time sea. Although Zen had never stepped into that island, he felt an inexplicable connection with it. He didn't want it to fall into the sea. In the future, I will definitely place this island above all the powerful clans, Zen thought to himself. In fact, the senior leaders of all the powerful clans had already known the rankings of the islands, because each clan had a few people who were responsible for the calculation of the points on the last day. After the floating island of the Zhou clan fell to the last place, the leaders finally informed its inhabitants to evacuate it. All the martial artists of the Zhou clan felt sad. The Zhou clan was actually one of the most powerful clans in the Time Sea. They had settled in the sea in the 340th Divine Era and recruited all the core disciples of their clan into the island. Those had been the Zhou clan's glory days. Before the 180th Divine Era, they had ranked in the top 5. Back then, they had never imagined that they would be forced to leave the Time Sea one day. Soon, countless sun-blind members came by small boats and took all the disciples of the Zhou clan away from the Time Sea. Zen noticed that apart from the small boats, they also had huge ships that were hundreds of feet long. The sun-blind race seemed to be extremely efficient at what they did. There were tens of thousands of small boats and large ships that were gathering from all directions. They looked like brown leaves that continuously floated over, carrying people away in constant streams. However, the population of the Zhou clan's floating island was very large. Counting the Zhou clan's members as well as members of other clans, there were about 700,000 to 800,000 people. It was not easy to evacuate so many people from the island in a short period of time. As Zen looked down at the scene of the Zhou clan members leaving the Time Sea, his eyes hardened. The floating island of the Zhou clan fell to the last place because it was oppressed by several powerful clans together. The Dongfang clan and the Mu clan supported the Xie clan and the Lu clan, and together, they oppressed the Zhou clan. This time, the Luo clan is not eliminated, but the Zhou clan is directly being driven out of the Time Sea. The holy being of the Zhou clan must hate the Dongfang clan. I wonder if it is possible to win over the holy beings who are eliminated from the Time Sea. Zen thought hard, and then suddenly shook his head with a smile. His father's layout was scrupulous in all aspects, so he guessed that his father must have made arrangements for this outcome too. All of a sudden, he felt a lot less pessimistic. While the Zhou clan was evacuating their floating island, the floating islands of the Xie clan and the Lu clan rose rapidly, surpassing other islands. In the end, the Xie clan was ranked 17th while the Lu clan was ranked 13th. Well, the Xie clan and the Lu clan are the ones who made the best of their opportunities. As soon as they became rich and influential, they joined forces with the Dongfang clan, and the Dongfang clan naturally raised their rankings. In the future, the Dongfang clan may be able to control the Hall of Holy Beings. The female disciples of the Purple Soul Hall sighed in a low voice. The rankings of the 36 floating islands were constantly changing. This time, although the rankings had changed a lot, none of the changes had come as a surprise. Suddenly, Zen felt a tremor under his feet. The entire floating island he was standing on began to slowly float upward. The Han clan had ranked 10th among the floating islands, but now, it surpassed the Tang clan, the Jiyu clan, and the Fang clan. At last, it was ranked 7th. The Jiyu clan's floating island dropped sharply from the 8th rank. The Jiyu clan had 2 consummate true gods, Halid and Augustus. Moreover, they had always had a great advantage when it came to points because they only had a few members. As such, the ranking of their floating island had always been stable. So now, its sudden drop in ranking caused a lot of exclamations of surprise from other clans. Only then did many people remember that Halid and Augustus hadn't fought in the open battles for the rankings of the floating islands. By the time all the floating islands were rearranged, the disciples of the Zhou clan had left their floating island. Under everyone's gaze, the magnificent floating island of the Zhou clan tilted slightly to the side and flew toward the Time Sea. The moment it touched the Time Sea, the magnificent sea seemed to turn into a ruthless giant beast that chewed the island into pieces and swallowed it up in the blink of an eye. Not even a single residue was left, and no waves were made. Standing on the boats of the sun-blind race, the members of the Zhou clan looked back, their faces filled with grief and reluctance. Chapter 1889, Samuel's Change. The spiritual heart hall was immersed in a peaceful atmosphere. The maids cheerfully splashed the holy dew, covering the hall with sparkling crystals. Alfredo and the senior leaders of the Han clan were all present in the hall. Their sole aim was to maintain the ranking of the Han clan's floating island. If the total number of points did not meet the requirement at the final stage, then they would dismiss the Purple Soul Hall, thus liberating themselves from all the trouble caused by the women of the Purple Soul Hall, as agreed before. But in the final 2 days, Laquisha defeated the anonymous man. She elevated the ranking of the Han clan without any help. She accumulated around 2 million points, so the ranking of the Han clan didn't fall. They climbed up a few places instead. The members of the Han clan were witnessing a miracle. Joy wore a purple dress. She looked quite elegant and beautiful in that dress. She leaned on the bench glancing around, lost in her thoughts. To be fair, Joy, our clan's demi-holy being, made the greatest contribution to the Han clan. She sent such a talented disciple to help us at our time of need. I didn't expect her to be capable of such a thing. Alfredo chuckled. The clan members looked at Joy with great admiration. Joy raised her head, a confused expression on her face, and asked, "What do you mean?" "I think our princess contributed the most. She helped us when we needed her the most. If the anonymous man isn't your disciple, how was he defeated by the princess so easily? Moreover, the god's killing sword array that was used by the anonymous man is your unique theurgy, isn't it? Today is a big day for us. Why don't you bring such a talented disciple here?" Alfredo said with a smile. Joy gave Alfredo a hard look and replied, "I don't know what you are talking about. There is no such talent in my Purple Soul Hall. I heard that the anonymous man has even mastered my god's killing sword array. What's more queer is that he can display the illusory swords with the cross-world theurgy. That's an impressive feat. I'm curious about him myself." Many people had believed that the anonymous man belonged to the Purple Soul Hall of the Han clan. They thought that he was a new disciple of Joy. But Joy was adamant, and protecting Zen's identity was her top priority. Had Zen been an ordinary talent, no trouble would have brewed. But since Zen was not an ordinary talent, the Dongfang clan would have taken him away if they wanted to. Therefore, keeping Zen's identity safe was quite important. He had to enter the Everest Spirit Mountain as soon as possible. If the Dongfang clan took Zen away, his identity would be revealed, and all his secrets would be exposed. So, when Zen cultivated in seclusion, Joy kept a distance from him so that no one could see them together. As for the questions, Joy pretended to be ignorant of such matters. There was no solid evidence to prove that the anonymous man was in the Purple Soul Hall. That anonymous man isn't in the Purple Soul Hall. When Alfredo noticed the shocked expression on Joy's face, he smiled. He hoped that Joy would cave in. This anonymous man might be in the Mu clan, the Han clan, or the Leng clan, or maybe he lives in the Purple Soul Hall. "But I really don't know who he is," said Joy, shaking her head. Alfredo was quite surprised by Joy's answer, not knowing what to say. Joy's words were enough to convince Alfredo that the anonymous man was not from the Han clan. Was it possible that he accidentally lost to Laquisha? If this was the case, the Han clan was quite lucky. Then, a faint laughter echoed in the spiritual heart hall. Hearing the laughter, the guards, maids, and many true gods in the hall all knelt down and said in unison, "Greetings, Holy Emperor." As the Holy Emperor of the Han clan, Samuel rarely showed up. The improvement of the ranking of the Han clan was a news worth celebrating, but everyone was surprised when the Holy Emperor joined in the celebration. With a meaningful smile on her face, Joy stood up slowly and bowed to Samuel. Samuel smiled. If all the rumors are not true, then the anonymous man wouldn't have lost to Laquisha. He belongs to the Han clan's floating island and has deliberately lost to Laquisha because he wanted to keep his identity a secret. Laquisha told me that the anonymous man doesn't want to join the Dongfang clan. You might be true, but I don't know anything about it, Joy remarked with a faint smile. She no longer supported Samuel. She thought that he had no ambitions anymore as he constantly tried to befriend the Dongfang clan. The smile on Samuel's face suddenly disappeared. He looked directly at Joy and said, "I don't care who that person is. You must find him by hook or by crook." The smile on Joy's face disappeared as well. Suddenly, the cheerful atmosphere of the spiritual heart hall turned sour. Alfredo and the others sat upright, with serious expression on their faces. They were quite surprised by the ongoing events. Was there something that the Holy Emperor knew, and they didn't? "What do you mean? I don't get it." Joy looked quite irritated. "The Dongfang clan insists on taking him away, so we can't hide or protect him," Samuel said. "But what if I refuse to do that?" Joy snorted. Since she failed to cooperate, she knew pretending to be innocent wouldn't help her. Samuel sneered. "The astronomical transit day will be held tomorrow. The people from the Dongfang clan will send someone here after that. Deal with them on your own." With that, Samuel turned around and prepared to leave. "Samuel Han!" Joy shouted in anger. The muscles of her body tightened, showing her perfect figure. Even though Joy was the demi-holy being, it was not appropriate for her to call the holy being by his full name. Alfredo and the other senior leaders were left in awe. They couldn't quite anticipate what was going to happen next. Samuel froze in his tracks. Must our Han clan be a vassal for another clan? Joy asked, raising her voice. The holy being, as the controller of the universe, had already surpassed the scope of a true god, and after they created a huge and complicated world, their comprehension of the world and life had risen to a new level. It could be said that every holy being had the absolute great wisdom. They had seen the collapse of the worlds as well as the annihilation of hundreds of billions of creatures, and had also experienced endless cycles of reincarnation of life and death. Therefore, how could such a holy being become a vassal for others? Joy perceived Samuel as invincible and matchless. And the Han clan had never depended on any other clan. Samuel's affiliation with the Dongfang clan troubled her. Samuel turned and stated in a serious tone, "No one. I repeat, no one is qualified to make me their vassal. Not even Jeremiah Lang, Murphy Mew and Nicholas Dongfang." With that, he left, leaving everyone confused. Chapter 1890. The Black Faith Energy. The meaningful words spoken by Samuel left Joy, Alfredo and the other Han clan members feeling stunned. It was Samuel, the holy emperor of the Han clan, who made the ultimate decision to curry favor with the Dongfang clan in recent years. Therefore, the people of the Han clan had nothing to say about it. In fact, even Joy hadn't dared speak her mind, even though she disliked such a decision. After all, the Han clan, its floating island and the clan's property were all created by Samuel. Now though, based on what Samuel had said, he seemed to have other plans. "I don't know what Holy Emperor is up to," Alfredo admitted. As the master of the Han clan, he seemed to sense a hint of danger. He had to control his emotion for the greater good of all. From Alfredo's and other Han clan members' perspectives, joining the rich and powerful clans, union wasn't a big deal, and they'd even gain great benefits from doing so. After all, the Dongfang clan did nearly control almost the entire Hall of Holy Beings. As long as the Sword clans and the Moon clan's holy beings didn't say a word, Nicholas Dongfang was the only individual allowed to make a decision in the Hall of Holy Beings. If anyone wanted to have a stable position in the Time Sea, it was almost inevitable that they'd attach themselves to the Dongfang clan. The Xie clan and the Lu clan demonstrated this perfectly. Both had been the last to rank and became more and more powerful with the help of the Dongfang clan. It is absolutely impossible for Samuel to demean himself in front of others. "Although I don't know what exactly he's doing, I'm afraid that if anyone wants to take advantage of Nicholas, they will drag the entire clan into deep trouble," said Joy hysterically. Then she turned around and left. Ever since the Hall of Holy Beings' establishment, the Divine Land was peaceful for thousands of divine eras. Prior to such, Joy had vaguely understood that Mike and Bromley's layout might affect the entire Divine Land, but she still hadn't thought carefully about her own, nor the Han clan's future. She hadn't made a clear plan for dealing with everything that was bound to happen, probably sooner rather than later. In this moment though, it seemed as though Samuel had a greater foresight than her, and he had already made his choice. Before Zen came to the floating island, she had been considering building another island and even thinking about her next opportunity for becoming a true holy being. "What should I do?" As she pondered this thought for a few seconds, Zen's figure flashed in her mind. "Should my choice be simpler?" she thought to herself. After the rankings of the floating islands were made public, Zen once again returned to the Purple Soul Hall's practice room. After condensing a godly tile, he immediately began collecting the faith energy. The evil god's movements were extremely fast. The martial artists of the inner world, and even the intelligent creatures from other races, all began to worship Zen's statues. Many years ago, Zen had seen the faith energy in the universe. At the time, Lavender's greatest reliance was the faith energy consistently accumulated by the Demon Knight. This latter energy was considered to be produced by the spirit. After the energy accumulation, certain specific changes would take place. The members of the Demon Knight even stored this faith energy in the special pools of faith. More so, the ancestral dragon even took faith energy as food and grew rapidly by means of such. It was simply impressive. However, something very strange had also happened in Zen's inner world. The statue erected in the Emerald Pine City quickly became the holy object in everyone's heart. Every day, people worshipped the statue and gave their faith energy to their creator. This amazing statue never needed to be cleaned, as it would not be tainted by any dust or dirt. However, one day, after a young warrior finished his worshipping activity, he raised his head, looked at the crowd before him and said, "The creator. The creator's statue has turned black." Staring at Zen's statue in the secret sect set up by the evil god was a behavior considered blasphemous. The vast majority of people bowed down and looked toward the ground in order to worship the statue. By the time the young man spoke out, Zen's statue had already darkened. In fact, this wasn't only true for the statue in the Emerald Pine City. Hundreds of other statues scattered around the world had turned black after a period of time. What was even more interesting was that the more people there were, the blacker the statues became. Who has stained the creator's statue in this way? Someone questioned. Who is bold enough to act in such a way? Someone else murmured. Let's scope the person out and burn them to death. A voice was heard shouting above the crowd. The pious people in the Emerald Pine City suddenly became noisy. They had all forgotten the fact that these statues emitted the sacred and inviolable aura, and almost no one could approach them. Zen's incarnation and the evil god appeared in the air above the Emerald Pine City once again. The evil god looked at Zen's black statue with a puzzled expression on his face and shouted, "It shouldn't be like this. How could faith energy cause the statue to become like this? Impossible." According to this world's measurement of time, the evil god had also collected faith energy tens of thousands of years ago, and at that time, Zen hadn't condensed his godly tile yet, which meant he was still unable to use the faith energy. The faith energy collected by the evil god at that time still wasn't normal, and Zen had witnessed the proof with his own eyes. And yet, something so incredibly strange happened after the godly tile had been condensed and the faith energy formally absorbed. The evil god could feel nothing but absolute confusion. Zen walked up and wiped at his statue with his hand, all while wearing a strange expression on his face. He looked at the people kneeling on the ground below it, and then said to the evil god, "I have to take this statue away first." Upon finishing his sentence, Zen and the statue simultaneously disappeared into the square of the Emerald Pine City. Of course, the evil god followed Zen and left, too. As expected though, as soon as Zen took the statue away, the people worshipping it began to wail. "Creator, don't abandon us," they shouted. "We are your most loyal servants." As it turned out, these warriors thought that Zen was venting his anger on them, thus taking the statue away. This, however, wasn't actually the case. As they continued worshipping the statue at all times, Zen had quickly become their spiritual sustenance. Whoosh, whoosh, Zen returned to the Emerald Pine City, his mouth twitching slightly. He didn't like the idea of setting up the secret sect, but after he mastered the godly way, it was necessary for him to gather the faith energy and use it within his inner world. Only holy beings didn't care about the faith energy, because they could use the momentum within the entire universe at will. During the war in the evolutionary universe, everything from the biggest beast all the way to the smallest blade of grass emitted momentum. A holy being didn't need to deliberately absorb faith energy. Even if someone set up a secret sect in the universe, or if the demon knight race were to take the faith energy, the holy beings wouldn't meddle in such situations. Zen waved his hand and a brand new statue appeared before them on the ground, landing with a slight tremble, which made everyone present cheer and applaud happily. Upon doing so, Zen simply turned around and left. The top of the mountain peak was white with snow. The black statue stood out against the white background. Zen reached out to grab the statue's hand, and with a gentle twist, the statue's stone hand immediately shattered. At the same time, a faint power was emitted from the stone. Zen looked down at the piece of stone he now held and said, "It's also black inside." The evil god picked up a piece of stone this time and thought, "The aura from this stone is similar to that of the faith energy, but why is it black?" "The black faith energy? What kind of secret sect have you actually built?" Zen asked, in complete disbelief. Because the followers had different beliefs, the colors and auras of the faith energy they produced would also be different. Lavender was the demon knight race's queen of killings. When countless demon knight members worshipped her, there would be an unanimous killing thought. In other words, Lavender's statue was blood red, and the faith energy gathered in the pool of faith was like a lake of blood, and the faith energy equally contained violent, killing wills. Chapter 1891. A place out of his control. Another example would be Latonia's faith energy, which contained the vitality of life. It was collected by the Queen of Life in the Demon Knight. The Queen's statue was green, as was the faith energy itself, which contained endless life energy. If the evil god established an evil sect, it was possible to possess this black faith energy. Upon hearing Zen's question, the evil god immediately understood what he meant. He shook his head and said, "It's absolutely impossible. The secret sect is established according to the traditional way, and there can't be any mistakes. Moreover, as you have seen, those believers are not evil people, nor are they able to bring this black faith energy. Besides, the statues all over the world are like this." Zen nodded and looked at his statue. "Well, I didn't feel any evil in this energy, but I don't understand why it is happening like this." The problem was that the faith energy had poured into stones from which it could no longer be separated, so how could it possibly be used? According to accounts of the process of forging the faith energy for an ordinary true god, the faith energy would automatically flow into the godly tile before accumulating, and the godly tile was equivalent to the pool of faith. But how could these black stones store it? It must be caused by the cultivation of the primal chaos technique, Zen thought to himself, his brows furrowing. Zen could have obtained a lot from the practice of the primal chaos technique. However, he had encountered a lot more trouble with it than he had expected. In spite of that, he had succeeded in gathering the godly tile in the end. Now, he encountered a new problem. While Zen was thinking, the evil god seemed to remember something, and said with a pensive expression, "Creator, there are some strange things in the world, and there are also some things. It looks like these black stones." He trailed off, not quite knowing how to put his thoughts into words. He looked up at Zen, hoping that he would somehow understand what he was thinking. "Tell me," said Zen. "Creator, please follow me," the evil god said, and as he spoke, he had passed through space itself, teleporting himself to another continent. Zen immediately followed suit, his figure disappearing into space, following the evil god to his destination. The land in his inner world split into 7 pieces. Tens of thousands of years ago, the continent before his eyes was called the monster-slaughtering continent. This continent had been connected to the world tree since those ancient times, and the local warriors thought of the green creatures on the world tree as monsters and had spent many years fighting against them, giving the continent its name. "Creator, that is the place I spoke about," the evil god said, pointing ahead. He was pointing towards a hilly area of the monster-slaughtering continent, part of which was shrouded in a faint golden light. The area covered by the glow resembled a huge gourd. Astonishment appeared on Zen's face, and he asked, "Where did the golden light come from?" Zen had the ability to know all things in this world. However, no matter how intensely he sought for it with his mind, he couldn't figure out where the golden light came from. In other words, the place bathed in the golden light was outside of his control. He couldn't understand why. It frustrated him that he could not control the world he had created himself. "I don't know. It seems to have appeared soon after you condensed the godly tile. The golden light has a strong innate repulsive force. If one wishes to enter, he or she can only do so through the entrance in that gourd," said the evil god, who flew down directly, aiming at the entrance of the gourd-shaped space. "It's a gourd-shaped area, and there's only one entrance," thought Zen for a moment, and then proceeded to step inside. As soon as Zen stepped into the area, he saw the forest in front of him shake as several burly blue giants emerged from it. These giants had 2 heads with 3 eyes on each, and their faces were ferocious and terrifying. They opened their mouths, exposing a pair of razor-sharp fangs. With a roar, they took off towards Zen at breakneck speed, and the ground shook beneath their strong, muscular legs. At the same time, a thin strip of snow appeared silently in front of Zen. It formed a circle around the double-headed giants, all without making a sound. However, the silence did not last long. With a sudden whirring sound, the giants were engulfed in the azure ice soul flame and turned into ice sculptures in the blink of an eye. It was the evil god who had done this. "Ice soul flame, you've mastered it perfectly," whispered Zen with a faint smile. "Thank you for your praise," said the evil god, cupping his hands together, a hint of triumph on his face. He had the skills to feel superior to anyone in the world, and yet the only person he truly respected was Zen. "I have been here once before. These double-headed giants are not that powerful, but there are some giants like them who have 10 eyes, and others with 100 eyes and even 1,000 eyes. The more eyes they have, the more powerful they are. The last time I couldn't defeat the giant with 1,000 eyes and had to return," added the evil god. "There are creatures more powerful than you." Zen had a strange expression on his face. In Zen's eyes, the evil god was much more talented than the majority of geniuses he had seen, and whenever he made some breakthrough, the evil god would always be the first of his kind to reach the maximum level that the laws of the world could permit. The idea of a being or entity that the evil god couldn't resist was unfathomable to Zen. If there was such a being, it should be Zen himself. "Take me there," Zen ordered. The two of them then proceeded to move, single file, through the gourd-shaped area. Just as the evil god had said, there were indeed all kinds of giants inside the special area covered by the golden light. Most of them had only a few eyes, but some of them even had eyes all over their bodies, which made them look very strange and frightening, as if these creatures should not exist at all. The more eyes a giant had and the bigger it was, the greater its strength would be. At the beginning, leading the way, the evil god could easily deal with those 3-eyed and 10-eyed giants. The 100-eyed giants appearing later, however, were more difficult to deal with. Although there were not many of them, the evil god usually needed more than 100 rounds before he could kill them. Go to perdition, Zen said, and as he did, he stretched out his finger and pointed at the 3 100-eyed giants surrounding the evil god. The 9 divine stars in the sky flashed, and an invisible force descended from them, instantly tearing these 100-eyed giants into pieces. Let's go, Zen said quietly. Now it was his turn to lead the way. The evil god smiled. The last time he had broken into this place, he had taken a huge risk, and had almost died trying to fight the 1,000-eyed giant alone. Not long after, Zen finally found the 1,000-eyed giant that the evil god had mentioned. This giant was nearly thousands of feet tall, and the surrounding hills looked like tiny pebbles in comparison. When Zen was outside of the area covered by the golden light, he hadn't seen such a huge creature. That meant that the golden light had indeed blinded him. Thinking of this, he felt an indescribably strange feeling in his heart. Ah! The giant turned and all its eyes focused at once on Zen and the evil god. Without saying anything, it aimed at them with its mountain-sized fist, about to punch them. As the fist moved towards them, almost in slow motion, so enormous it blotted out the sky, Zen calmly pointed at it with his finger, just as he had done before. The fist suddenly stopped in midair, unable to go any further. Then, with a gentle flick, a much fiercer force overpowered the huge monster. Bang! The 1,000-eyed giant collapsed, and the force of its fall started a tremendous earthquake. As the land continued to shake, the giants in the depths of the forest began to scream, one after another. The giant wanted to get up again, but Zen had already jumped onto it and stood on its mountain-like head. As Zen stomped on it, the giant's head became pressed further and further into the ground. Unable to pull its head out, it could only wave its giant arms in vain. Although the giant had 1,000 eyes, it seemed unable to see anything. This creature shouldn't have been born in my inner world, and such a powerful creature couldn't have been formed overnight, Zen said to the evil god. The human race and the other intelligent creatures in his inner world had all undergone a great amount of tribulations, and they had thus gradually evolved into what they were today. I think so too, said the evil god, passing the giant's body and then entering the forest as if looking for something in its depths. Soon, he came back with a number of black objects in his hands. The evil god stretched out his arms, presenting them to Zen, and said, Creator, look, I think these black objects, too, contain the faith energy. The black objects in his hands were thin. As Zen observed them, his eyes suddenly showed disbelief. They're divine might coins. This time, it was the evil god's turn to be confused. Divine might coins, what are they? Zen heaved a sigh of relief. He had figured it out. I think I know what this place is, he uttered. Chapter 1892, The Origin of the Forbidden Land. The scene in front of him had even cleared the many doubts in Zen's mind. Master Evil informed Zen that all the divine might coins were found in the Forbidden Lands. However, Zen was unsure how they were produced in the first place. The Life Vitality Crystal and Life Vitality Jade were condensed by the vitality between heaven and earth. After they gathered for countless years, they formed mines. Even if a mineral vein was dug out, other mineral veins kept growing and replenishing the source. So the Life Vitality Crystal and Life Vitality Jade were almost inexhaustible resources. The Divine Land had been in existence for countless divine eras. During this long period of time, countless true gods had set foot into the Forbidden Lands. Divine might coins were present in various Forbidden Lands. Even if there were huge quantities of divine might coins, all of them would be dug out and taken away one day. If this happened, how would the warriors who arrived later find and get their hands on any of these coins? According to Master Evil's explanation, a true god who stepped into a forbidden land would always find the divine might coins, which meant that the coins would constantly keep appearing. Finally, it all made sense to Zen. He figured out that the divine might coins were formed by the faith energy of the true gods. What is this place? The evil god inquired curiously. Zen glanced around until finally his eyes fixed on the giant with 1,000 eyes. He then smiled broadly and said, This is the world you have imagined. The world we have imagined, repeated the evil god. Surprise was written all over his face. Zen nodded, and suddenly an idea occurred to him. The history of the monster-slaughtering continent in the past few years played like a movie in his mind. With the help of his omniscient ability, he quickly found the clues he needed, and then remarked casually, the monster-slaughtering continent belonged to the Hao clan many years ago. I've heard of the Hao clan. It's an ancient race, added evil god nodding in agreement. The conflict between the Hao clan and the Totem clan had begun long before the birth of the evil god, but the history of the two ancient races had passed down from generation to generation, so mostly everyone was aware of the enmity between these two races. It's recorded in history that the queen of the Hao clan was exquisitely beautiful, so she seduced a god to help her. Are you the god who aided her? The evil god questioned and then asked with a lecherous smile, as the queen of the Hao clan as beautiful as she's made out to be in the stories. According to the legend, the queen of the Hao clan was regarded as the most beautiful woman in history. Her beauty could even blind a god and make him lose his senses. As a man, the evil god naturally had interest in this on a primal level. Zen nodded. Yes, it's me, she is indeed a perfect woman. At the time, Zen had interfered in the war between the Hao clan and the Totem clan, in which he had lent support to the queen of the Hao clan, although he had not given her much power. As the creator of this world, Zen wouldn't intervene too much. In fact, even now, he could use the mud to create the queen just using his mind, but it was just meaningless to indulge in such things. Back then, the Hao clan and the Totem clan were very afraid of the heavenly spirit race in the world tree, so the local mortals hoped that there would be some creature that would be able to bless and protect them. Zen continued, the creature must have a strong and burly body. Moreover, its appearance should be terrifying enough to scare off the heavenly spirit race. Evil god quickly guessed the rest. The creature they imagined must be a monster covered with numerous eyes. Yes, you're right, Zen replied with a smile, nodding. In the early days, the Hao clan could only imagine the giant with 3 eyes. However, once their imagination was triggered, the picture became more vivid in their minds. More and more members of the Hao clan started to make up something that didn't exist. As a result, there were giants with 10 eyes, 100 eyes, and even 1,000 eyes. This was the most primitive form of faith. If the Hao clan had imagined dragons at the very beginning, then what Zen and the evil god had encountered there were not these giants but giant dragons in strange shapes. Over countless years, the legend of the giant with 1,000 eyes didn't fade, but instead it became a part of the human culture. As generation after generation added to this legend, their imagination turned into subconscious faith energy and got accumulated over time. When Zen's godly tile was formed, a forbidden land in the shape of a gourd was formed. Why did it take the shape of a gourd? Because it was said that these giants were born from a gourd. In the same way, even the Everest Spirit Mountain, the Soul Wilderness and other various forbidden lands were created due to the thoughts of the divine citizens. In fact, these thoughts were the basis of faith energy. The legends that were passed down through countless divine eras formed many forbidden lands. When a forbidden land appeared, people were more convinced of the existence of the forbidden land, which would in turn cause more forbidden lands to appear. Thus more and more faith energy would be produced for the forbidden lands to absorb and thrive. Zen reckoned that it was no coincidence that the Everest Spirit Mountain, the Soul Wilderness, the Swirl Forest and the Abyss Demon region went on to become the 4 great forbidden lands. It was just that the legends of these 4 forbidden lands existed at the very beginning and hence had been passed on for the longest time. They were the oldest legends. The Abyss Demon region was like mad according to the stories of the divine citizens. Everyone believed that they would go to that region after they died. The amount of the faith energy that the Abyss Demon region absorbed was the highest. Therefore, warriors found it was most difficult to explore this region. Even holy beings would find it tough to defend themselves if they entered the depths of this region. It's incredible, the evil god exclaimed as he looked at the giant with 1,000 eyes. He never thought that the world would be so wonderful. Zen suddenly pointed his hand at the giant and gently flipped his palm. And then an invisible force instantly crushed the giant with 1,000 eyes into dust. Logically speaking, even if I kill all of the giants here, they will reappear in a certain amount of time. Even the divine might coins in your hands will appear again. You can come in and verify this the next time, Zen said nonchalantly. Let's go to the next place to have a look. The evil god nodded and then asked, I'm still confused about one thing. You said that everything here was imagined, so then what about these divine might coins? Did these black coins also appear in the legend of the monster slaughtering continent? Zen stared at the divine might coins and shook his head. These divine might coins are formed by faith energy. This forbidden land needs a constant supply of the faith energy. This energy gets sucked into this space. After an adequate number of giants have been formed, and the place is saturated with the faith energy, it will transform into the divine might coins. This was Zen's guess too. According to the clues he had gathered, his guess would not be too far from the truth. The only thing he couldn't figure out was why the divine might coins formed from the faith energy were black. Zen collected all the divine might coins in the forbidden land and took them with him when he left with the evil god. Then Zen and the evil god found another forbidden land on the ice land, which was covered by the ray of light purple light. The ray of light covered a triangular area, which was the same as what happened on the monster slaughtering continent. Zen was unable to unearth any information about this forbidden land. The two encountered a kind of human-shaped snow monster with long hair upon entering this forbidden land. These snow monsters were very powerful in the evil god's eyes. However, no matter how mighty these fierce creatures were, they wouldn't be able to harm Zen. Zen found over 100 divine might coins in this forbidden land, and at the same time he also discovered the legend of the polar snowman, which proved his guess correct once more. The forbidden lands in Zen's inner world had just been established right now, and there weren't many divine might coins in them yet. But the time in his inner world ran faster than that of the divine land. As the forbidden lands became larger and larger in the future, the number of divine might coins would also increase. The divine might coins could be used to change the laws of the ruling slate, but that was not something he could dwell on at this point. The bigger issue for him was to figure out a way to use the faith energy in the divine might coin. How would he crack this one? This was the topmost priority for Zen right now. Chapter 1893, The Astronomical Transit Day. The divine land had existed for countless years, so it went without saying that the talents there had diligently studied the effects of the divine might coins as much as they could. But in the end, all they were capable of using the coins for was to change the rules on the ruling slate. This meant that the true gods could not wield the true power of the coins. Zen, who was no stranger to experimentation, used his strong power to crush the coins, but all he ended up with was a handful of black powder. He was unable to release the faith energy in the coins. He even tried sprinkling the black powder onto his godly tile as well as into the chaotic sea, but the powder didn't react with anything. During his time in the inner world, he exhausted all sorts of strange and bizarre methods to try to release the true power of the coins. The evil god gave him advice and suggestions as well, but in the end, he had no choice but to temporarily give up on this endeavor. There were certain facts that he might have ignored. It was possible that the faith energy constructed by the chaotic energy in the divine land could not be directly used. Whatever it was, Zen didn't feel upset or disappointed. After all, now that his godly tile was condensed, he had become a true god. This improvement in his cultivation had also caused a great increase in his strength. Zen ordered the evil god to stop the secret sect for the time being after his avatar left. At this stage, he was unable to use the faith energy, so it was useless to collect it in the statues. Moreover, the extra faith energy would automatically form divine might coins. After he gave the order, his consciousness returned to the practice room. Although he had spent a lot of time in his inner world, only a few hours had passed in the divine land. When he opened the door to go outside, he saw that it was already past dawn. He hadn't seen Joy in recent days. After all, the Dongfang clan had started to look for him, the anonymous man. His performance in the arena of legends had almost made them sure that he was a member of the Purple Soul Hall, so Joy was doing her best to avert suspicion. "It's time to leave the floating island," Zen said, staring at the tumbling clouds in the sky. The rankings of the floating islands had been reorganized yesterday, so the channels to the Forbidden Lands would be open today. Zen left the Purple Soul Hall and went to the Holy Emperor City again. Traveling by flight and spatial transference was prohibited in the Time Sea. This was a rule stipulated on the ruling slate. However, in order to monopolize the Forbidden Lands, the Hall of Holy Beings had revised this rule. They had built transmission channels that were directly connected to the Forbidden Lands on the floating islands. The inhabitants of the floating islands could directly travel to the Forbidden Lands by spatial transference via the channels. Moreover, these transmission channels on the floating islands had become the only entrances to the Forbidden Lands. It was precisely this reason that had made the true gods of humble birth in the divine land grind their teeth in hatred. Because of this revised rule, true gods like Master Evil had lost the opportunity to enter the Forbidden Lands. Cultivating, discovering divine might coins, and looking for opportunities in the Forbidden Lands had all become the privileges of the disciples of powerful clans on the floating islands. This hindered the progress of the divine citizens. In the past, true gods of humble birth had had opportunities to become consummate true gods and even holy beings. But now that they had lost access to the Forbidden Lands, it was almost impossible for them to come across such opportunities to develop themselves. When Zen arrived at the northern part of the Holy Emperor City, he saw a row of guards of the Han clan standing in front of a broad square and blocking the path of the true gods. "The rankings of the floating islands have been settled. Why can't we go to the Forbidden Lands today? I made a great effort to earn enough points. I must go to the Everest Spirit Mountain. What happened? How strange." The true gods of all ranks who were gathered there were complaining among themselves. Seeing this scene, Zen frowned slightly. He looked behind the guards and saw that the square they were guarding was where the transmission channels were. The transmission channels set up by the Han clan were a row of stone walls. Zen didn't know if the transmission channels of the other powerful clans also looked the same. Bro, we should be able to use the transmission channels to go to the Forbidden Lands today, right? Zen asked a true god. The true god glanced at Zen and said bitterly, I thought there would be a lot of divine might coins inside the Forbidden Lands since no one has entered them for a while, but we are not allowed to enter. Who knows why? Divine might coins were what all these true gods were after. The Forbidden Lands had been explored for decades. As soon as a divine might coin appeared, it would immediately be taken away by an explorer who was lucky enough to chance upon it. But since no one had been able to enter the Forbidden Lands in the past few days, there must be a lot of divine might coins ripe for the picking. Zen nodded. The faith energy in the divine land was not infinite. Only when the faith energy was sufficient would the divine might coins be condensed. Zen suddenly had a bad feeling. Was this ban from entering the Forbidden Lands aimed at him? It was highly possible. If the Mu clan or the Dongfang clan were insistent on finding out the identity of the anonymous man, they would probably exert pressure on the Han clan. If that was the case, it would only make sense for the Han clan to close the transmission channels until they found the anonymous man. While Zen was worrying about this, he heard a resounding ring in the air. Clang! The ring had not come from the floating island, but from the depth of the clouds. All the people immediately raised their heads to the sky. Just then, a golden light penetrated the clouds and swept across the floating islands before shining on the surface of the time sea. After it reached the surface of the sea, it bounced back and reflected a magnificent and colorful ray of light. At the sight of the golden light, enlightenment dawned on many of the true gods' faces, including the face of the true god next to Zen. Oh, I see. No wonder we can't enter the Forbidden Lands today. Today is the astronomical transit day, the true god said. The astronomical transit day. Zen raised his eyebrows. He hadn't expected that the astronomical transit day of the sun-blind race would come right after the rankings of the floating islands were rearranged. No one would be able to use the transmission channels on the astronomical transit day. It was the grandest festival of the sun-blind race. On this day, even the sailing on the time sea would come to a halt. It was customary for the mysterious race on the sea to invite a few important people from the powerful clans. Zen was also invited. Suddenly, the words that an old man from the sun-blind race had told him flashed in his mind. The old man had said that Zen's aura resembled the terrifying aura of the Emperor Resentment, a monster that resided in the time sea. Alas, today is the astronomical transit day. The only people who are invited are the principal figures of each clan. Of course, none of us stands a chance. We can leave now and come back another day. It's said that attending the astronomical transit day will bring unimaginable benefits, and that the participants can even explore the secrets of time. In the eyes of the world, the sun-blind race had always been covered by a mysterious veil. These true gods would never be able to participate in the astronomical transit day, so naturally, there were all sorts of guesses thrown out among them. None of them knew exactly what the astronomical transit day was. After a few minutes of complaining and speculating about the festival, the true gods gradually began to leave. Should I take part in the astronomical transit day? Zen wondered hesitantly. The biggest problem for him now was not the Mu clan. Although they were interested in finding the anonymous man, they would not be able to connect Zen to the anonymous man. Besides, Murphy, the only person who had seen his true identity, was still being punished by the ruling slate. As for the Dongfang clan, they didn't have any malicious intention by looking for him. They just wanted to recruit him as a member of their floating island. If he faced the worst situation, he could activate the token of mountain and return to the fairy palace in the swirl forest. With this thought, Zen made a decision. Chapter 1894, The Invitation. Thousands of transparent discs rose slowly from below the floating islands and stopped at the entrances of the floating islands. The true gods from different floating islands stepped onto the discs and slowly descended to the bottom of the floating islands. These true gods had different cultivation bases, and even some were low-rank true gods. No matter what cultivation bases they had, they were the elites of the wealthy clans on the floating islands. Before long, dozens of transparent round discs also descended from the floating island of the Han clan. Laquisha stood alone on a disc, expressionless. Elena and Kelsey stood together on another disc. The two girls were whispering to each other and side-eyeing Laquisha from time to time. Worry was written all over Elena's pretty face. Laquisha had been practicing hard in her room during this period, and now looked totally different. It was easy for a smart girl like Elena to get to the root of the problem. She was sure that Zen was responsible for the change in Laquisha, but she couldn't figure out what had happened between her sister and Zen. I think Laquisha is in a bad mood because of Thad Luo, Kelsey murmured. I think so too. Kelsey didn't know Thad's true identity. However, Elena did, and she had a bad feeling that her sister would be in greater trouble if she continued to be involved with Zen. Most younger sisters worshipped their elder sisters during their childhood, and this adoration usually continued well into adulthood, and Elena was no exception. In fact, she mostly liked Zen only because of Laquisha. To her, it seemed like her sister only liked the best things or people. In fact, deep down, she was even a little jealous of her sibling. But if Zen hurt her sister, she would not stand it and would do everything in her power to destroy him. I'll talk to Thad after Astronomical Transit Day, Elena whispered. Meanwhile, Pascal also stepped on a transparent disc and glided down from the other side. He had been busy and never paid much attention to Laquisha in the beginning. Now seeing that she was all alone and looked sad, he asked, Laquisha, why are you unhappy? Hearing the voice, Laquisha suddenly raised her head and forcing a smile, she replied, Brother, don't worry. I'm not upset. Okay then, that's good. He smiled softly and added, it's Astronomical Transit Day today. Remember, you must perform well. I know, she nodded. After a short while, the motley group of warriors had all arrived on the giant disc at the bottom. Beneath their feet the time sea raged and rumbled. The disc was already swarming with elites of various powerful clans on the floating islands, and they were waiting for the invitation to the Sunblind race. The invite for the Sunblind race was an exclusive one. Anyone and everyone would not be invited, only holy beings and demi-holy beings. The true gods assembled there all needed to assess their own strengths and determine whether or not they were qualified. The Sunblind race had a special set of methods, and they could sense every move in the time sea. If it was not Astronomical Transit Day, once a warrior stood anywhere in the time sea, they would appear from out of nowhere and send the warrior to their destination. If they selected a warrior who they thought was qualified to take part in Astronomical Transit Day Gala, they would send a boat for them. Dozens of boats floated across the boundless time sea. The Sunblind race dashed over and invited the true gods to their boats one by one. Then they took off at an incredible speed. Before long, Laquisha, Pascal, Elena and Kelsey were also picked up. The rest of the group craned their necks to see across the time sea, waiting for their chance. It was almost time for Zen to leave the Holy Emperor City. He arrived on the edge of the floating island and stepped onto a transparent disc. In addition to Zen, some members of the Han clan, and a few members of other clans were also present. Some people from other clans also tested their luck on Astronomical Transit Day. Although they were outsiders, they wanted to try. What if the Sunblind race chose them? The chances of something like this happening were not very high, but there had been some exceptions in the past, so it was not an entirely hopeless scenario for the outsiders. This was the idea of the true gods who arrived with Zen. Not all the elites of the floating islands would be invited. Nobody knew anything about the Sunblind race's selection criteria, so there was always a bunch of people who left feeling disappointed and even angry. These Sunblind people are all bloody blind. I am ranked 320th among the mid-rank true gods. Why didn't they invite me? Akli Tang grumbled and swore as he watched the boats disappear farther and farther into the distance. The remaining elite people's faces went pale when they realized no more boats were coming. Their eyes blazed in anger. Zen and the others descended right at that moment. This group of people had naturally come to try their luck. Earlier, Akli Tang was very disappointed, and he was even more furious when he saw this group of people. Although the people who took a chance to be invited rarely ever got the opportunity to be invited, every year, there were always some who got lucky enough to be invited to participate. You bunch of trash. Do you really think you would be invited? Ha ha, this is so funny. Who do you think you are? Jeered Akli Tang loudly. There are so many people in the world who aren't self-aware. Why are you getting angry with them? It's not worth it, another elite disciple echoed. Hearing this, the true gods, who intended to try their luck, naturally didn't feel good. However, they couldn't afford to provoke these elites of the large clans on the floating islands. All they could do was swallow the insults and stand by silently, hoping that a boat would take them away. Zen stood there with a dull, bored expression and kept mum. Akli Tang continued complaining and was ready to pick a fight. If anyone from the group dared to provoke him, he would teach them a lesson. However, they all stayed silent like idiots. He glanced around and fixed his eyes on Zen. You've gotta be freaking kidding me. Even a low-rank true god has come to join in the fun. It looks like the number of psychos is increasing more and more here. If one day, a large group of proving godly warriors would join in, it would be more fun. The true gods who came to try their luck had a solid reason. They either thought that they were pretty talented, or they felt that their cultivation base was dang good. They were either mid-rank true gods or top-rank true gods. Zen, on the other hand, was just a low-rank true god. He was staring at the time sea in the distance expressionlessly, but sensing that Akli Tang was picking on him, he simply closed his eyes to rest them. Not surprisingly, Akli Tang didn't give up. He walked up to Zen and demanded, "Tell me, which floating island are you from?" Zen didn't deign to reply. He simply remained motionless like a statue. "Hey, you, I am talking to you. Can't you hear me?" Getting no response from Zen infuriated Akli Tang even more. The other true gods noticed the commotion, their faces revealing a pitiful expression. They thought that Zen would be in trouble shortly and it would be better for him to just cooperate. At the very least, Akli Tang might let him go. Seeing that Zen's eyes were still closed, Akli Tang stretched out his hand to slap Zen's face like a streak of lightning. He cursed, "I'm asking you." Just when he started to move, Zen suddenly opened his eyes and slightly leaned his head back. The tips of Akli Tang's fingers swept past the tip of Zen's nose, missing his face by an inch. He was a little stunned to see that Zen had dodged his slap so easily. The next thing he saw was Zen's figure flashing past and his collar being grabbed by the young man. An irresistible force pushed his entire body back uncontrollably. Akli Tang was standing on the edge of the huge disc, and behind him was the time sea whose waves were rolling savagely. If he fell off the disc, he would certainly die. Even a consummate true god would be torn to pieces by the menacing sea water, and he was just a mid-rank true god. He looked terror-stricken, but suddenly his body stopped in midair, and at the same time, a faint voice said, "You are a dignified true god, but your temperament is like an inferior mortal hooligan. Whichever clan has a scumbag like you is really unfortunate. The huge disc floated very close to the surface of the time sea now. The colorful waves rolled and crashed, and from time to time, some waves stretched towards Akli Tang's head, threatening to swallow him any minute. How could he dare to oppose Zen now? He cried out in panic and his overbearing attitude disappeared completely. When the other true gods saw this, they took a deep breath. They never thought that the ordinary-looking low-rank true god would be so ruthless when pushed to make a move. Chapter 1895, Dragon Bone Ship. All the blood was drained from Akli's face as he panted desperately and uncontrollably. Since he was a member of the Tang clan, an ordinary mid-rank true god wouldn't dare offend him, let alone a low-rank true god. He never expected that Zen, who certainly wasn't an elite disciple from any large clan, dared to fight back and even wanted to kill him. Now however, his life was on the line. Thus, he refrained from saying anything that might irritate Zen. Puffs of hot air escaped his lips as all he begged for at that moment was mercy. On the other hand, Zen really didn't want to provoke those disciples from the large clans. There were indeed many outstanding and highly talented people on the floating islands, but there were always some rotten fruits at the bottom of the fresh pile. He tried his best to avoid such kind of people, but Akli had gone too far this time. Then again, his righteousness prevailed as he still had some scruples and did not have any intention of killing Akli. After all, his identity was a sensitive issue and this place was not safe for him in any way. Whoosh! A small breeze blew as Zen lifted Akli with force and smashed him against the disc. He didn't know what the disc was made of, but its surface was abnormally hard. Even though Akli was a mid-rank true god, he still felt uncomfortable when he collided against its surface. Moments ago, Akli was on his knees begging for mercy. After he landed on the ground, however, his attitude suddenly changed. He thought that it was just because Zen's attack had caught him off guard, but if it wasn't for that, Zen would have never stood a chance against him. He stood up and released the power within his body with newfound hope. Yet before he could even steady himself, he saw a figure flash in front of him. It turned out to be Zen, who raised his leg and kicked downwards. Bang! The great force hit him square on the head. His legs gave away as he couldn't bear the immense pressure, and ended up kneeling in front of Zen. "If you dare make another move, I will kill you straight." "Don't think that I wouldn't dare to do so," Zen coldly said and stared down at him. Although Zen couldn't use the faith energy in his inner world and couldn't release his momentum, his strength had increased significantly after he had condensed the godly tile. In addition, the improvement of his cultivation level had also caused his body and soul to completely change. His cold aura hung above Akli's neck like an invisible guillotine, ready to chop down anytime if Akli moved even a bit. In the end, Akli couldn't do anything but kneel still like an obedient dog. Everyone on the huge disc fell silent. All of them quietly observed Zen and guessed about his background in their heads. The total number of true gods from the 36 large clans on the floating islands, however, was over 1,000,000. The only time Zen had fought in public was in the Holy Emperor city of the Han clan, so no one on the disc had recognized him. After a few seconds, he lifted his leg from Ackley, turned around, and stood aside. His eyes once again fell on the time sea. When Ackley saw that Zen had distanced himself from him, he slowly got up from the ground. Even though he had undergone a great humiliation, he didn't dare fight back again. He couldn't see through Zen's strength at all. Only the disciples of the holy emperors could have such power as a low-rank true god, but this guy in front of him. Which clan does he belong to? Why haven't I seen him before? Ackley wondered. Some members of the Han clan were also present. They had left the floating island together with Zen, so they clearly knew that he belonged to the Han clan. However, they didn't spread this piece of information. After all, they belonged to a same floating island, the same clan. At that moment, a small black dot appeared on the distant time sea. All the true gods on the round disk immediately broke into cold sweats at the sight of the black dot. They were only present because they had to wait for the sun-blind race's invitation. Now, a boat had arrived to invite someone, and no one knew who the lucky person would be. The small black dot continued to approach them rapidly. A young man from the sun-blind race rowed the boat, and it took him only about half a minute to arrive at the huge disk. When it stopped, everyone held their breaths as they anticipated with excitement. Whoosh! The young man from the sun-blind race whistled sharply, and pointed at Ackley at the same time. Me, Ackley exclaimed as he slowly pointed to himself. He couldn't believe what he just heard. All of the humiliation he had felt until that point seemed to be gone at that moment. He silently jumped up and boarded the boat. Suddenly, his eyes lit up as if he had remembered something, and then he turned his head towards Zen. Hey, are you still expecting to be invited by the sun-blind race? Maybe in your next life. He taunted with a laugh. Indeed, Ackley was truly happy. Meanwhile, Zen simply crossed his arms and looked at Ackley with dead eyes, and his face remained stoic as ever. As for the others, they couldn't help but be envious of Ackley. Against all odds, Ackley had actually received the sun-blind race's invitation. Soon enough, the boat sailed away and everyone was quiet again. Then, someone quickly pointed to the distance and said, "Look. There comes another boat." The rest of them looked in the direction he pointed and saw a larger black dot appear on the sea surface. The black dot repeatedly neared them, until they realized that it appeared to be a large ship. Generally speaking, the sun-blind race used two kinds of boats. The first one was a small boat that could only carry one passenger. A member of the sun-blind race usually rowed it. The second one was a large ship that was several hundred feet long. Back then, when the Zhou clan's floating island had fallen into the sea, such a ship had been used to evacuate the disciples of the Zhou clan. Nowadays, it was rare to see one. Why did they send a large dragon bone ship here? Are they going to invite all of us there? In your dreams. Despite the large dragon bone ship's appearance, the true gods didn't think that it was sent to pick someone up. Considering the members of the sun-blind race's personalities, not even a consummate true god could receive such treatment from them. The first group of people who were taken away included the consummate true gods of the large clans. All of them had taken small boats to leave. Everyone's eyes followed the big ship as it neared slowly. On the ship's deck stood an old man from the sun-blind race. "It's him," Zen said. He recognized the old man. He was the ferryman he had met when he had entered the time sea. "Our distinguished guest, we sincerely invite you to join our astronomical transit day gala," the old man politely said as he gestured Zen to get on board. A faint smile made its way to Zen's lips as he took 2 steps forward. He tapped the edge of the platform with his toe, then he flew into the air and gently landed on the deck like a bird. The true gods on the huge disc watched the scene incredulously. They stared at Zen blankly and couldn't understand why that happened. Who is he? How could he get such a treatment from them? Only the holy emperors are qualified to board the dragon bone ships, right? Perhaps the holy emperors could enjoy this treatment, but they were different from the consummate true gods. The consummate true gods were forbidden to use the spatial transference skill on the time sea, but the holy emperors and the demi-holy beings were allowed to do so, and they did not need to be taken by the sun-blind race with ships. Therefore, Zen was probably the first one to be picked up by a dragon bone ship on the astronomical transit day. "Go back to the island," the old man shouted. A large ship like the dragon bone ship needed over 10 people of the sun-blind race to steer it, which naturally made it faster than ordinary small boats. It had only been a while since Ackley had left, so the ship Zen had taken soon caught up with the small boat. The wind gently blew through Zen's hair as he stood on the deck. He looked down and saw Akli on the small boat. Akli looked up as well and saw Zen. His lips subconsciously twitched a few times. He too stared at Zen dumbfoundedly like those true gods on the disc. He immediately felt rather insignificant in the presence of the large ship. Splash! The ship moved with a sudden burst of speed, which caused large waves that rocked the small boat. Akli turned to the young man who steered their boat and couldn't help but ask, why could that guy ride a big ship? What are you thinking about? Who is he? Yet, the young man only shook his head and shrugged his shoulders. For the majority of the time, the members of the sun-blind race did not say a word, but they were able to communicate with each other even in silence. Besides, the young man couldn't possibly answer such questions. Chapter 1896, Illusion Smoke. Never did Zen think he would be treated as such by the sun-blind race. The huge dragon bone ship seemed to be speeding up. Gradually, the floating islands on the time sea turned into small black dots until they fully disappeared from Zen's view. The old man of the sun-blind race remained silent as he returned to the cabin to pull out a delicate cigarette pipe. He then took out a small packet from his waist pocket and poured out powder from it. Zen did not know what sort of powder it was, but it looked as colorful as the time sea. After the sun-blind old man ignited the powder, he took a deep breath, emitting colorful smoke. Zen's eyes flashed with surprise upon witnessing the smoke. A faint layer of the time law appeared within the cloud. The cigarette is made from the illusory grass in the time sea. It produces the illusion smoke when used, and within it, you will see an illusion of the past. Do you want to take a puff? He said before offering the cigarette pipe to Zen. Though Zen didn't smoke, he was very interested in the time law. Even after entering the floating island, Zen had almost no chance to cultivate the time law. But the smoke breathed out by the sun-blind old man could spread the time law, naturally piquing Zen's curiosity. Taking the pipe from the old man, he fiddled with it before taking a puff. The moment he breathed in the illusion smoke, Zen immediately felt something tearing into his throat. After all the small pieces of the time law dissipated, they caused some small wounds inside his body. Simultaneously, the smoke flowed through these wounds until he fully absorbed it. Dizziness overcame Zen and the colorful smoke he coughed out spiraled around in front of him. Then, some scenes began appearing faintly. Through the smoke, Zen saw a huge turtle floating on the surface of the time sea. It was tens of millions of miles long and on its back was no city, but an entire continent. Zen squinted, trying to see more clearly, but the smoke quickly floated away until the illusion quickly disappeared from his eyes. The sun-blind old man smiled and asked, "What did you see?" "A turtle," Zen answered. "Well, lucky you. You can see the cliff spirit on the first puff of the cigarette," laughed the old man. "Cliff spirit?" Zen asked curiously. "It is one of the biggest true spirits in the ancient legend, the mount of the Lord of Weapons." "Lord of Weapons, Chiyu?" Zen asked further. The old man nodded. After mentioning Chiyu's name, Zen's memory floated back to Rocher, whose strength had improved greatly after obtaining Chiyu's treasure. Rocher had stepped into the divine land before him. Zen had no idea where he would now be. With Rocher's abilities, it was also possible for him to try every way to enter one of the floating islands, but Zen didn't meet him. "What happened to his turtle, then?" Zen asked. "No one knows. Perhaps it was killed or perhaps it left the divine land," the old man explained. Since Zen entered the divine land, he had always tried his best to understand its history. In the Purple Soul Hall, he had also searched through many ancient books and records. Soon, he discovered that some of the ancient histories of the divine land was still incomplete. Zen was totally confused. The true god's lifespan in the divine land was infinitely long, lasting practically forever. There had to be a few true gods who had been living in the divine land since ancient times. Under such circumstances, it was impossible to find fault in history. But when Zen tried to learn from the divine land's history, he discovered that there were many things still incomplete, as if someone had deliberately erased it. Once again, Zen tried smoking a few times. Each time, the illusions he saw were different. Sometimes, it was the incomparably huge red bird, sometimes it was an incomplete picture, and sometimes it was an indistinct figure of a man or a woman. According to the old man, these scenes had happened in the past, but most of them were meaningless. Since Zen couldn't understand those scenes, he stopped trying. But what Zen didn't know was that the colorful smoke he spat out didn't disappear after it drifted out of the large dragon bone boat, hovering over the time sea. A short while later, a small boat slowly approached the smoke. On it was a member of the sun-blind race with a weirdly shaped cigarette pot in his hand. He made a strange gesture, gently opening the cigarette pot and pointing to the illusion smoke, still in a constant swirl. The smoke Zen had puffed out turned into a long snake before it was sucked right into the cigarette pot. This member of the sun-blind race looked to the direction of the dragon bone ship and whispered as he raised his hand to row the boat away quietly. 2 hours later, the ship finally arrived at its destination. The sun-blind race lived on a group of black islands, much like a dense mass of stars that stood in the time sea. Several small buildings were built on the islands, only about 20 to 30 feet wide. The seawater below was constantly pitter-pattering as if the buildings could be devoured at any time. Witnessing this scene, Zen further recognized the miraculous situation. These sun-blind people's cultivation levels were not particularly high. At the very least, the ones he saw were ordinary divine citizens. The true gods treated the time sea as a sea of death. Still, the sun-blind race could easily survive in such an environment. The dragon bone ship passed by the small islands before finally entering a major island. At the edge of the main island was a wide port where the true gods of the floating islands were still in the middle of gathering. How could there be a dragon bone ship? A true god asked. Maybe it's the honored guest invited in by the sun-blind race, another one of the true gods said. The others were just as curious. It was the astronomical transit day, and the honored guests invited by the sun-blind race were the elites of the wealthy clans on the 36 floating islands. Whether it were consummate or low-ranked true gods, they were supposed to be treated equally. Honored guest, is he more honored than us? Nellie said proudly. Standing behind her, Rochelle kept silent. With her were the other consummate true gods of all wealthy clans such as Walton, Alfredo, the masters of each floating island and others. It could be said that apart from the holy beings and the demi-holy beings, the most powerful and talented people of every wealthy clan had gathered there as well. Such a group of people could be said to represent the divine land's future. Who else in the divine land could possibly be more distinguished and honored than them? But as the dragon bone ship approached them slowly, many of the true gods widened their eyes. A low-ranked true god was standing on the deck of the huge dragon bone ship. Who was this guy? Why was a low-ranked true god treated so politely by the sun-blind race? As they waited, the true gods grew chattery. Many of them lowered their heads and began whispering among themselves. The consummate true gods quietly looked at Zen, seemingly lost in thought. It's him. In the back of the crowd, Alfredo thought the whole situation odd. This is the disciple enrolled by Joy into the Purple Soul Hall. How could he be invited by the sun-blind race to attend the astronomical transit day? More importantly, why was he getting such good treatment from the sun-blind race? Ah, it's Thad. Kelsey jumped up and smiled at the sight of Zen. Kelsey, but Alfredo stopped her with a frown. Laquisha, it is him, indeed, Elena murmured. Even from a long distance, Laquisha's gaze fell right on Zen's body. Her expression seemed rather complicated. Though she had guessed that Zen might have been invited by the sun-blind race, she never thought that they would pay so much attention to him. Thanks to Kelsey's reaction, the true gods there quickly understood what was going on. Is that guy on the dragon bone ship from the Han clan? Chapter 1897, The Island of the Sun-Blind Race. The dragon bone ship slowly went ashore under everyone's gaze. When Zen jumped off the ship and landed on the shore, his eyes fell on the people from the Han clan. Elena gave Zen a playful smile, to which Zen responded with a nod before shifting his gaze to her sister, Laquisha. When Laquisha's striking eyes met Zen's, she raised her eyebrows slightly, revealing a trace of anger, before turning away. It seemed that she was still angry at him. Zen smiled bitterly and then found a place to wait. When Elena noticed the expression on her sister's face, she became lost in thought, wondering if something had happened between her and Zen. Most of the true gods' eyes were still focused on Zen, and they murmured among themselves about where he'd come from. This guy doesn't seem to be from the Han clan. Yes, I think so too. It was apparent from the way Zen didn't greet Alfredo, Pascal, or any of the others that he was not familiar with the Han clan at all. However, someone present did recognize Zen. It's him again. He has actually become a low-ranked true god in such a short time. A gloomy voice came out of nowhere. The one who had spoken was Langston from the Leng clan. Langston, do you know this guy? Nellie asked, confused. Humph, he is the one who killed Sheridan. His name is Thad Luo. He's also the one who caused the wound on my forehead. I didn't expect that he would break through in his cultivation and condense a godly tile in such a short time after entering the floating island, Langston said coldly with a murderous hint in his eyes. He still felt a lingering fear when he thought of how he had gotten his wound. If he hadn't responded so quickly that day, he would have been killed by that guy. And if it weren't the astronomical transit day of the sun-blind race today, he probably would have attacked him. You were struck by a proving godly warrior. You were too careless, said Nellie indifferently. Hearing what Nellie said, Langston felt annoyed. His cultivation was a level higher than Nellie's. How could he tolerate her undermining him like this in front of everyone? He immediately retorted, even you may not be a match for him. Sheridan wasn't much weaker than you, but he was still killed by that guy. Rochelle, who had been silently listening to the conversation between her sister and Langston, suddenly had a thought flash through her mind. His surname is Luo, a new talent of the Han clan. With her eyes on Zen in the distance, she asked, he was only a proving godly warrior and he killed Sheridan. Didn't the Xie clan cause trouble for the Han clan? The death of Sheridan had indeed caused a big ruckus back then, but Rochelle had been too busy to notice it. During that time, she had been preparing for the battle with Harold and hadn't had the time to care about anything else. Now, after hearing about this mysterious Thad Luo, she had a vague guess in her heart that she wanted to verify. Yes, they did, but that guy seems to be a member of the Purple Soul Hall. He was under Joy's protection, said Langston coldly. He couldn't help but feel annoyed when talking about this matter. Purple Soul Hall, did he just recently join the Purple Soul Hall? Rochelle asked again. Rochelle had always been a being of few words. As a consummate true god of the Mu clan, she seldom talked to juniors like Langston. So naturally, Langston found her sudden interest in this topic odd. However, he didn't comment on it and instead said, I checked his background. It's true that he only recently joined the Purple Soul Hall. As soon as those words left Langston's mouth, his eyes lit up in realization. A mere proving godly warrior had killed Sheridan and had had Joy to protect him. Langston immediately began to reevaluate Zen. Rochelle, do you suspect that he is the anonymous man? He asked in a low voice. Langston was a mid-rank true god. Although he had heard that there was a great anonymous man in the Hall of True Gods going up against low-rank true gods, he hadn't taken it seriously at that time as he had been busy winning points against mid-rank true gods. Until now, he had never connected Zen to the anonymous man. But now, after hearing Rochelle's questions, it had suddenly dawned on him. Nellie's small mouth was slightly open in surprise and her sharp eyes were fixed on Zen. She was trying to match Zen with the anonymous man in her heart. It's very likely, Rochelle said with an icy smile. Of course, what Langston didn't know was that she didn't care whether Zen was the anonymous man or not. The anonymous man was just someone who had been chosen by the Dongfang clan. As for whether the Dongfang clan could bring the anonymous man to their floating island, it had nothing to do with her. What she wanted to verify was something else. Not long ago, when she had lost to Harold, she had reported to her father Murphy about the news that the Everest Spirit Mountain would not be open to the Mu clan anymore. Upon hearing that, her father had asked her to pay attention only to the Han clan, because that was where the stowaways were most likely to be. The stowaways had entered the Divine Land 2 years ago. Now, there was an extremely strange anonymous man that had suddenly popped out of the Han clan. Before, she had wondered if the anonymous man did not dare to reveal himself because of his sensitive identity. Now, she had even confirmed that the anonymous man's surname was Luo. The time, surname, and talent all almost matched the information she had gotten about the stowaways. Such a person could never have come from the group of ordinary divine citizens. At this moment, she was almost 100% sure that Zen was one of the 2 stowaways, but she still needed to confirm it. Although she was suspicious, she didn't let it show on her face. Today was the grand astronomical transit day of the sun-blind race, so it was not the time for her to catch Zen, torture him, and force him to tell her his real identity. What was more, it was only a guess, she didn't have any proof. Anyway, she would have a lot of chances to observe him during the astronomical transit day celebration. If she could confirm that he was one of the stowaways, she would definitely kill him without any hesitation. In the floating island, Zen had indeed considered the possibility that someone would see through his pretense. However, after weighing the pros and cons, he had decided that attending the celebration was worth the small risk. Besides, he planned to immediately leave the floating island after the celebration ended and head for the Forbidden Land. Zen was only this confident because he had never considered the possibility that someone would talk to Murphy. But since Rochelle had had a conversation with Murphy, she had become a lot more vigilant. So as soon as Zen had just showed up, he immediately caught Rochelle's attention. As everyone waited, Sun-Blind members constantly arrived with guests on the ships. After a long time, about 7 members of the Sun-Blind race came over and saluted the crowd. The Sun-Blind member in the front said politely, "Today is the astronomical transit day. We are very honored to invite all of the true gods here. Please follow me." With the sun-blind members leading the way, all the true gods left the port and headed into the island. On the surface, the island of the sun-blind race looked like an extremely ordinary island. Judging by the surroundings, the living environment was almost the same as the living environment of ordinary divine citizens. But after entering the island, the true gods could feel strong time loss spreading out almost everywhere, ranging from small plants to rocks around the island. The time sea could tear apart anything, but this small island was somehow able to resist its devastating power. It was an extremely peculiar feat. This gathering place of the sun-blind race was probably the only island that existed in the time sea. Soon, everyone arrived at a flat and wide open space. The open space was surrounded by sun-blind members of all ages. All of them prostrated on the ground devoutly, and no one looked up at them. What they were worshipping were the 9 well-shaped stone pagodas in the center of the open space. Chapter 1898. The Appearances of Holy Beings. There were 9 pagodas, all built within 10 feet of each other. Complicated, mysterious patterns were carved onto them which emitted an extremely powerful time law. These 9 pagodas can be pieced together, it seems, Zen muttered. Each pagoda had its own distinct pattern that seemed to be able to connect to another pagoda. If all 9 were put together, it could form the complete picture. The sun-blind race currently worshipped these 9 pagodas, so a solemn and peaceful environment hung over the area. Please wait here, be quiet, a sun-blind member told them in a low voice. The true gods all nodded and found a place to sit down. Elena and Kelsey, who had been following Lucretia closely, took this as an opportunity to get closer to Zen. The young man was looking at the pagodas when 2 girls suddenly appeared beside him. He was a little surprised but kept calm. What is it? He asked in a low voice. What did you do to my sister? Elena asked in a low voice, but there was a hint of a smile in her eyes. Lucretia doesn't seem to look happy recently, Kelsey added. Zen couldn't help but reveal a helpless smile with these 2 girls questioning him. He didn't think he did anything wrong. Lucretia was a princess of the Han clan while he was a desperado who had been walking in the dark. Agreeing to her proposal would only cause her more harm. Say it, Elena snapped angrily at Zen. Seeing this, Zen figured that she wouldn't give up that easily. He shook his head helplessly and used his chaotic energy to communicate with her. I will be leaving soon. Your sister wanted to leave with me but I refused. It might be a better choice to just tell her the truth since Elena might be able to change her sister's mind. It made Zen's heart ache to see such a sad expression on Lucretia's face. Alea tilted her head in thought and glanced at her sister carefully. She then turned to Zen and raised an eyebrow. Why did you refuse? Isn't my sister a good woman? She was even willing to elope with you. You're so heartless to refuse her like that. A man like you. Zen looked at her in a daze. He never expected Elena to rebuke him. Kelsey looked at them in confusion. She just knew they were talking through telepathy. What are you talking about? Zen ignored her and chose to reply to Elena verbally instead. You know my background, he said and pointed to the ground. If I'm here, I'll be in danger all the time. If his identity was ever exposed, then the Mu clan would kill him with no hesitations. My sister isn't afraid of death, Elena replied, chin high. What? How can you treat your sister like that? He asked. His question made Elena think, and she quickly realized that she might have been overreacting. Even though she was a proving godly warrior, she was still only a teenager, and if she thought about it more rationally, she understood that Lucretia wouldn't really be able to leave with Zen. Even if you did the right thing, you shouldn't have refused her, she still insisted. Zen knew there was no use arguing with this girl, so he chose to stay silent. At this time, a group of sun-blind members appeared at the other end of the flat square. The sun-blind race normally dressed in grayish-brown robes, with some even half-naked. However, these warriors that approached were dressed in luxurious clothes decorated with faint, colorful lines. Time law leaked out of the fabric which nobody knew just what kind of material it was made of. These people, are they the true gods of sun-blind race? Zen asked, his gaze sweeping over the group. The sun-blind members Zen met were all divine citizens, but these ones all had high cultivation levels. The auras they emitted were completely different. The only similarity Zen could place was that they were also blind. These members were lined up on both sides of the square, arranged from highest to lowest of rank. The low-rank true gods were outside while the top-rank true gods and consummate true gods were on the inside. A consummate true god slowly walked out from the middle. He quickly scanned the area with his life vitality and said in a polite voice, "Today is the astronomical transit day of our sun-blind race. We welcome the holy emperors from the floating islands. The consummate true god then put his hands on his chest, which was indicative of the sun-blind race's highest etiquette. His voice also faded as he finished speaking. The holy emperors are also joining the celebration? Zen asked in astonishment. The sun-blind race might hold a special position, but he didn't think it would be possible for them to invite the holy emperors of all powerful clans on the floating islands. True, they were an indispensable part of the time sea, but at the end of the day, they were mere ferrymen. Now that they were able to invite such esteemed guests, then that meant their status was much higher than what Zen first imagined. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. There were loud, swishing noises as the island began to surge. Endless, auspicious clouds bloomed one after another, as if a rare treasure had just arrived into the world. In the blink of an eye, a man in a yellow robe suddenly appeared over the island. Flying and space traveling were prohibited over the time sea, so even top-rank true gods and consummate true gods were restricted in their movements. The rules, however, didn't seem to apply to this yellow-robed man. He is a holy being, Zen remarked to himself after feeling an extraordinary aura emanate from this man. It wasn't his first time seeing a holy being. He had already met Holy Bromley when he accepted him as his personal disciple in the library of the Fairy Palace. Later on, he met two more holy beings in the Divine Refinement Forbidden Land, Holy Jay and Holy Drew. He also met Holy Murphy and Holy Mike. However, he did not meet them physically. The holy beings Zen interacted with were all soul marks or projections in their inner world. Murphy and Mike were only two energy souls when he met them. As soon as the yellow-robed man appeared, the consummate true god of the sun-blind race immediately bowed in respect. Greetings, Holy Hamlin. Holy Hamlin, which clan is he from? Zen asked Elena quietly. However, she still seemed to be unsatisfied with him and thus ignored his question. Kelsey was more helpful. He's the holy emperor of the Zhao clan, Hamlin Zhao. Outsiders call him Holy Hamlin. Hamlin Zhao nodded in acknowledgement of the consummate true god's greeting before suddenly disappearing. The next moment, he suddenly appeared above the square. As he appeared above the square, another ball of red light rolled over from the horizon and a burly man appeared out of thin air. The consummate true god politely bowed at the newcomer. Greetings, Holy Clark. Holy Clark's face was flushed red and he let out a loud laugh. You're too polite, he said, descending from the sky. He raised his fingers and gently rubbed them together. Wisps of flame appeared, weaving together and forming a huge flame throne for him to sit in. Zen heard Holy Clark's voice before. Back in the Arena of Legends, Harold announced that he forbade the Tang clan from entering the Everest Spirit Mountain and got into a fierce argument with Clark as a result. The flame throne summoned by Holy Clark was peculiar, and Zen's heart skipped a beat when he took a closer look. The flame was condensed from the elementary fire godly way and its internal momentum was astonishing. There was no doubt that the holy being had mastered the godly way with ease since no heat emanated from the throne despite it burning so brightly. Judging from his behavior, Holy Clark most likely became a holy being through his reliance on the elementary fire godly way. Zen wasn't sure what stage it was in, but if he used the infinity ruler to get its internal momentum, then it would benefit him greatly. He thought about it, but did not dare act rashly. Chapter 1899. The Head of Sun-Blind Race. These holy beings had incredible awareness. If Clark, the holy emperor of Tang clan, had detected something, then Zen might have gotten in trouble. After Clark arrived, the holy emperors of other powerful clans on the floating islands, including Fang clan, Qin clan and Li clan, all showed up one after another. Of course, Samuel, the holy emperor of Han clan came as well. Other than the top three clans, the other powerful clans, like the Leng clan, only had one holy emperor each. But the top three clans were different from the rest. For example, the Moon clan had three major forces, the Moon sect, the War God Hall and the mysterious Soul Building. Each of them had a holy being. The Sword clan had four elderly men wearing black clothes, indicating that they were four holy beings. The second and the third ranked clans have 3 or 4 holy beings. Their strength is far beyond that of an ordinary clan. I wonder how many holy beings there are in the Dongfang clan, Zen wondered and looked up. Suddenly, the sky turned dark, as if there was no light in the world. No one was able to see anything. This lasted for a very short period of time though. When everyone regained their vision, they saw a person appear in the sky. He was wearing a long black robe and had long hair. He looked quite elegant and handsome, as if men's fortitude and women's tenderness had been integrated into him. Welcome, Holy Nicholas, said the consummate true god of sun-blind race, his hands cupped. Before Zen could inquire, Kelsey explained in advance, Nicholas Dongfang, the holy emperor of Dongfang clan. He is the #1 warrior in the Hall of Holy Beings. Zen glanced at Nicholas and gave Kelsey a nod. Elena couldn't take it anymore. She telepathically told Zen, "After I came back to the floating island with my sister, we found something disturbing. It was after your father was defeated by Nicholas that Murphy took the opportunity to attack him." Zen's face didn't bear any expression when he heard that. He just gave her a nod and stared at Nicholas as if trying to imprint him in his mind. He had already guessed that Nicholas had something to do with this. With the combined power of Mike, Bromley and Holy J, the Mu clan wouldn't be able to deal with them alone. No one in the Divine Land had the ability to destroy the Luo clan except for the Moon clan, the Sword clan and the Dongfang clan. Since Nicholas was in league with Murphy, he must have dealt with Mike in the past. As the last holy being showed up, more than 10 people arrived. They were the demi-holy beings of different clans. Each powerful clan had a holy being, but not every clan had a demi-holy being. After all, a demi-holy being also had the opportunity to become a holy being, and they were of great importance to any big clan. Out of the 36 powerful clans, about half of them had their own demi-holy beings. These demi-holy beings quickly took their seats. Their seats were a level lower than those of the holy beings. Joy was present among the group of demi-holy beings. She looked down and saw Zen standing in the crowd. She gave him a warm smile and thought, "This guy is not afraid of death." Now that all the holy beings and demi-holy beings took their seats, the consummate true god of sun-blind race asked with his eyes shut, "Why haven't I seen Holy Murphy yet?" Hearing this question, Clark, the holy being of Tang clan, laughed and said, "He attacked Mike's universe and was punished by the ruling slate. Therefore, he is still in the prison." "Murphy is too impulsive," the holy being of the Chin clan said with a chuckle. "Maybe he really wants to get rid of Mike as he can't forget what happened that year," another holy being added. Zen also noticed that the holy beings that spoke were the members of the powerful clans that were being targeted by Harold. Therefore, they were Zen's foes. As for the holy beings of other powerful clans such as the Moon clan and the Sword clan, they mostly remained silent with a blank expression on their faces. Murphy did the right thing. Now since Mike's body no longer remains, there is no need for the evolutionary universe to exist. Therefore, we should wipe it out completely as soon as possible, Samuel said suddenly. Some holy beings looked at Samuel strangely, while Jeremiah, the holy being of Leng clan, laughed and said, "You know, what Samuel said makes sense." Samuel was one of the legends in the Divine Land. It seemed that he was determined to ally the Han clan with the alliance of powerful clans led by the Dongfang clan. Elena threw Zen a cautious look. She understood how he felt. The thought of her father going against Zen's father made her heart ache. When other warriors of Han clan heard their holy emperor, they felt a bit disappointed. They had always been proud of their own clan, but their holy emperor was creating unnecessary allegiances with other clans. The thought of this sickened them. "Since Holy Murphy is unable to come, we don't need to wait," the consummate true god of sun-blind race said. He turned around and kneeled towards the depths of the island. At the same time, all the members of sun-blind race knelt down and kowtowed in one direction. "Leader, please preside over the astronomical transit day ceremony," the consummate true god of sun-blind race said loudly. The leader of sun-blind race. Zen was confused. His heart was filled with anticipation as he wondered who the leader of sun-blind race might be. Was the leader also a holy being? It was possible, or else the Hall of Holy Beings wouldn't have taken part in the astronomical transit day ceremony. Did they participate because the members of sun-blind race could ferry people in the time sea? Since these powerful clans were able to build transmission arrays to the major forbidden areas, they could also build transmission arrays which would lead directly to every place in the Divine Land. What they needed to do was change the rules on the ruling slate. Then, Zen saw a woman wearing a white robe. She was barefoot and was walking quite slowly. As she approached, Zen noticed that she was wearing a strange mask that completely covered her face. Zen felt as if the woman was not real. As she slowly walked over, her figure was like a candlelight that was blown by the night wind, in a trance. It seemed as if the woman was shuttling back and forth in another space. She kept disappearing and reappearing continuously. Everyone thought that she wasn't real and was just an illusion. What surprised Zen even more was that almost all the holy beings and demi-holy beings present rose and bowed to the woman. Isn't a holy being the supreme existence of the Divine Land? Zen wondered. It seemed as if the status of this woman was higher than the rest. He looked at Elena with a confused expression and asked telepathically, "Elena, what's so special about the leader of sun-blind race? Since she is just a divine citizen, why did all the holy beings bow to her?" Elena gave him a faint smile and said, This is because she has the right to decide the life and death of every living creature in the divine land. Every living creature, even a holy being? Zen asked in shock. Elena nodded. Yes, she has the right to decide their fate, even if one's a holy being. But how is this possible? This makes her capable of killing anyone she desires. Zen was in awe. If any of the holy beings waved their hand, the whole sun-blind race would probably be wiped out. Yes, said Elena, among all these people present here, she can kill anyone she desires except for 3. And only 7 or 8 people in the entire divine land can't be killed by her. The others have no power over her. How is this possible? Zen asked in disbelief. Take a guess, Elena playfully teased Zen. The sun-blind race was a mysterious race in the entire divine land. However, as a core member of the family, Elena always had the opportunity to learn some secrets that the others did not know. And the other core disciples knew about it as well. Chapter 1900. The Time Sword of Gods. I don't think that I'd be able to guess, Zen said, shaking his head helplessly. He really didn't know what Thurgy could kill everyone at will. Elena gave the woman in white a look and said, don't you think she's in a strange state? Zen gave her a nod of approval. The woman did look as if she was in a trance and might disappear any time. Well, she doesn't really exist in this world. She lives in time, Elena said through her life vitality. She lives in time? He asked Elena with a confused look on his face. Zen had already witnessed the time law in the universe, but when the warriors and the true gods used the time law, they could only delay the passage of time. Such was the simplest use of the time law. Time was quite mysterious and difficult to comprehend. Yes, the head of the sun-blind race can go through the time sea freely and change the past in any time period, Elena said. In other words, she is able to trace back to any time in the entire divine land. Huh, Zen's eyes widened with surprise. That's quite a strong ability to possess. So now do you understand the whole concept? Elena asked. Therefore, in theory, she can kill anyone in the divine land, but there are some restrictions imposed on her. Whenever she displays the time backing, she has to pay a heavy price. The holy beings were quite strong now, and maybe the woman in white was no match for them. However, she had the ability to go back to any time in the past. The endless training and opportunities in many divine eras enabled the holy beings to acquire all they had today. If the woman in white went back to hundreds or even thousands of divine eras ago, the holy beings were only ordinary divine citizens, or even babies that had just been born in the divine land. Had she killed them then, it wouldn't have been possible for her to meet them now. Such was the ability of the white-dressed woman. Besides the fact that going back in time was incredible, there might have been something else the woman in white could do, as indicated by the reaction of holy beings. There must be a reason behind the holy being's attitude towards the white-dressed woman. Is this the ability of the timing godly way? Zen asked, still very much confused. It would be quite incredible if this ability was gained by cultivating the timing godly way, as there was no room for anyone to resist it. No one was initially strong. No matter how powerful the holy beings were now, there was a time when they were quite weak. If the timing godly way was indeed so powerful, then there wouldn't have been any need to cultivate other godly ways. Of course not, Elena said, shaking her head. It's true that the timing godly way has the power of time backing, but it can only be used for oneself. One can only use it to go back to his or her past, but the woman can use it to go back to any time in the divine land. And how does she do that? Zen continued to inquire. The time sea is also a large forbidden land. She has controlled the time sea and obtained the time sword of gods. Thus, her ability is derived from the sword, Elena explained. The time sea is a forbidden land? Zen asked, clearly baffled. The majority of the true gods in divine land were unaware of the fact that the time sea was a forbidden land. Many disciples of the powerful clans on the floating islands didn't know about it, and a few who did acquired this knowledge from the astronomical transit day. It was the first time for Elena to attend the astronomical transit day. Since Laquisha and she enjoyed a high status in their clan, it wasn't difficult for them to stumble upon such secrets. Moreover, it was the second time that Pascal had attended the astronomical transit day, so he had told them something beforehand. That's why things are as they are. Zen gave her a nod. He had always been puzzled. According to the temperament of the holy beings of the powerful clans on the floating islands, they would have driven the sun-blind members away from the time sea, or even killed them. The sun-blind members ferried others across the time sea. With such low efficiency, how could the powerful clans tolerate it? They didn't have any choice. In the early days when the powerful clans took control of the time sea, they did have conflict with the sun-blind race. At first, there were 6 powerful clans on the Time Sea. Then, a new holy being also built his clan's floating island and joined the Time Sea. This new holy being was high-spirited and arrogant. He couldn't tolerate the sun-blind race, and even killed about 50 to 60 ferrymen. The 6 powerful clans didn't express their opinions about this matter. They thought the sun-blind race was mysterious and weird, and they didn't want to provoke them in any way whatsoever. It wasn't in anyone's wildest thoughts that one day the new holy being would disappear along with his universe. Normally, it would take thousands of years for a huge universe to completely collapse, but the disappearance of the new holy being and his universe overnight was a complete and an utter mystery. Then, the sun-blind race invited the holy beings of the 6 powerful clans to attend the astronomical transit day for the first time. Thus, when they attended the astronomical transit day, they came across the female patriarch of the sun-blind race for the very first time. The patriarch wearing a mask told them that she had killed the new holy being. It was a well-known fact that the holy beings were immortal unless their universes were destroyed. After they built their universes, their lives were closely linked to their universes. Therefore, it was impossible for the patriarch of the sun-blind race to kill a holy being quietly. Neither the patriarch nor anyone else was able to do it. Therefore, after killing Mike, Murphy started a war in the evolutionary universe. Even though at that time there was no Hall of Holy Beings, and there were no rules as far as a war was considered, the holy beings still couldn't destroy the huge universes in a short time even if they wanted to. But the female patriarch showcased her ability to destroy universes. On the astronomical transit day, one of the holy beings carried a sword with him. The sword was not a top-grade one, but he used it quite frequently in the past. It wasn't of much use to him now, yet he carried it with him wherever he went. Not long after the female patriarch left the grand meeting, the sword of the holy being suddenly disappeared. The holy being was quite shocked by seeing this. When the female patriarch appeared again, the holy being stared at her in confusion and murmured, "How did you?" A sword appeared in the hand of the female patriarch. It belonged to the holy being. The rest of the holy beings were confused by her antics. They had no idea what was going on between that holy being and the patriarch. Later they learned that a memory had appeared in the holy being's mind. In that memory, the patriarch had traveled back to 40 divine eras ago. At that time, that holy being was still a low-rank true god, but he was robbed of his sword by the patriarch. The patriarch told him that they'd meet 40 divine eras later. Only then did the other holy beings understand how powerful the patriarch of the sun-blind race was. The fact that the holy beings were invincible was a mere joke to her. The female patriarch's presence enabled the members of the sun-blind race to safely sail their boats on the Time Sea. No clan dared to provoke them. But you said that she couldn't kill everyone, right? Zen asked again with curiosity. Yes, I heard that she couldn't kill Nicholas, the holy emperor of the Dongfang clan, Elena said. I don't know what he did, but he seems to hide all his traces in the divine land, so the patriarch of the sun-blind race can't track back to his past and can't kill him. She briefly heard these stories, and she wasn't aware of the full details. As Elena was speaking, the patriarch of the sun-blind race walked barefooted towards the 9 pagodas. She reached out her slender hands and gently waved them on both sides. The 9 pagodas began to move slowly towards the middle, and they leaned against each other, forming a mysterious stellar pattern. There was a total of 9 stars in the pattern. Each of them had a different color, and the star in the middle was light blue. This time it's going to be the water luminous star, the patriarch said softly. After she finished speaking, she reached out and gently patted the star. Zen noticed the light of the star become dimmer. He raised his head, and much to his astonishment, he saw a light blue star appear in the sky.